There's quite a bit that I need to get off my chest throughout the course of this production. Therefore, I'd advise each and every last one of you to listen to me very carefully. And let me start off in my usual formation, which is something that I have not done in my most recent productions. I want you to start off by giving me the thumbs up, get my likes up in this production. This is probably going to be one of the most important productions that I'm going to do throughout this year. Secondly, I want you to share this production. Share it as much as you can, because I believe many people need to listen to what I have to say. Furthermore, for those who would like to leave some sort of support for the productions that are made on this channel, you can feel free to do so via the links in the description box. And I would like to, most certainly last but not least, thank each and every last one of you who have felt the need to leave some sort of a donation. Now, with that being stated, about 2 days ago, I sat back and I listened to a video from Michi X, a live stream that she did. I believe it was a little bit over an hour. I got through about 50 minutes of it, so I think there's maybe like 20 minutes of it remaining that I have not watched. The title is called "Let's Discuss the Connection Between the Vaccines, LGBTQ, AI, and How It Affects You," with Michi X. And AI is something that I've wanted to talk about that I just haven't gotten around to on this channel yet. And I'm hearing a lot of talks about AI. I'm hearing a lot of talks also, in addition to AI, people are saying that they want to download your consciousness into a hard drive, and they got the technology to do this. Some of you believe that they have the capability of producing a clone, which I'm kind of skeptical about that. But I want to add in some things of what I think you should be focused on. I want you to understand that everything goes off of momentum. You have a handful of people who don't have large numbers, who are pushing some wicked, sinister agendas. And we see this now more than ever. And the only way they can be successful at pushing their agendas is to get the majority of people on board with their agendas. There's no better example of this than what took place back in 2020 with the pandemic. Now, let me just go ahead and talk about the pandemic. And I don't want to labor too long into this, but I might be a bit long-winded, so stick with me. What I witnessed when I looked at what took place with this pandemic back in 2020 into 2021 was some of the most piss-poorly orchestrated gobbledygook, if you want to call it that I've ever seen in my entire life. You would think that it was a bunch of 3-year-olds who were quarterbacking this whole thing, so to speak. And what I seen was miscoordination, people who weren't in sync with each other, just a bunch of nonsense. And I'm not talking about those who are the naysayers like myself. I'm talking about those who are pushing the agenda. The mask up, lock down, get vaccinated. And now we found out that none of these things work. And which I've known this since the beginning of the pandemic. But what I stated when this whole thing happened, if y'all remember, I posted up some videos when all the lockdown started. And I got into my car. And I drove all the way down to the end of Manhattan. And I pretty much, well, I think the camera was facing me. That was one of the few times I've actually got my face on camera since 2019. And I just drove through Manhattan. And I took videos around certain segments of Manhattan and just walked around and just showcased how much of a ghost town it really was. And I think the last video that I made, I think the second to last video, I was down there by the World Trade Center, the Freedom Tower. And I told people that I believe that this is a test run of what's to come. This is the test run. And I also told people that it's no longer the virus that I'm afraid of, but the agenda that's going to be pushed behind it. The virus is just going to be the means in which they can push their agenda. But the virus is not what you ultimately have to worry about. And as we know, the virus had less than a 1% death rate. The majority of people who had the virus and stayed home, key word, listen to what I'm saying, stayed home now, didn't go out and go to a hospital, made a full recovery. As a matter of fact, last year, I came down with the virus. It was just like having flu-like symptoms. And I might have even had it before the whole pandemic was even announced back in the beginning of 2020. I'm talking about back in January. But at that point in time, it wasn't talked about yet, at least not in the totality that was spoken about as far as in February and March. But I told people that there was an agenda that was going to come behind it, and that's what scared me. And I also mentioned that this was a test run, that they wanted to see how far they could go. And I'm talking about your elites, your ones who are pushing these agendas, that were backing these agendas, even though they were blatantly contradicting themselves from one moment to the next, but still telling you you need to listen to them, even though nothing of what they were telling you remotely made any goddamn sense. What that told me is that this is a matter of momentum. The success that they will have with this will be based off of how many gullible, stupid people they can get into fear-mongering to follow their agenda. And the more people they can get on board with their agenda will be the easier they can actually perpetuate this. Because like I told you earlier in this production, they're a very small group of people who are pushing this. They don't collectively have the numbers or the resources. So what do? They go about and they empower gullible, stupid people. People who have never held no significance in their life, who have never held any real power in their life. And they tell them, and this is just an example of this, and this is how I started to put all this together back when the whole thing happened. When I sat back and listened to former Governor Andrew Cuomo give a speech about the pandemic, and he was on every day giving these meaningless speeches. And some of y'all were so stupid that y'all were impressed by him just because he would show his damn face every day and say a bunch of nothing, even though New York City had the highest death rate when this whole thing started. But some of y'all were still impressed by this guy. For what? I don't necessarily know. But that's for a different discussion. But one of the things that he mentioned is that for the fellow New Yorkers who are wearing the mask and doing the right thing, now they depict them as the good guys, the people who want to put on the mask and lock down and stay inside. They give them kudos. They give them empty, phony, false praise. And the ones who weren't wearing masks, they shamed them. To the point where he was even telling people that if they're not wearing, for you who see your fellow New Yorkers not wearing a mask, hopefully you will shame them, say something to them. Now the thing is, as an adult, you know better than to get involved in somebody else's business. You know if somebody is doing something that you might not necessarily agree with. Now, I'm not talking about if they're doing something that's extreme or egregious, but if it is something that you don't see eye to eye with them on, you don't then take it upon yourself to confront them, because that can lead to a real problem. So I had to ask the question. I mentioned it to y'all back at that time. What was he doing? And I'm pretty sure all these liberal Democratic politicians who are running these cities and states were all saying the same thing, copying the same playbook, telling those who were wearing a mask to start calling out those who weren't wearing masks, even to the point where they started saying, hey, if you see people having large gatherings in their homes of more than 6 people, that you need to call the cops and report them. Now, see, anybody with half a brain would know that that's not my place. If somebody wants to pack 100 people into their damn home, as long as they're not disturbing anybody, who the hell am I to go ahead and call the cops on them? That's their given right. But to people who are stupid, meaningless, never had any real significance or real power in their life, what it did was it empowered them to say, oh, I can go ahead and call up and have so-and-so reported, even though you live 2 houses down from them. This is the nonsense that they were pulling. And what I stated what this was a matter of deputizing stupid people. Even to the point where, when it boiled down to the masks, and people confronting those who weren't wearing a mask, it led to physical confrontations, physical altercations, and even assault, and one person being killed. I remember there was a news clip or something that came out on the news. I think it was a white guy who was in a store and somebody confronted him, telling him to wear a mask, and I think he stabbed him and killed the person. I don't know if it was a woman or who it was. Then when the cops approached him, which was a lady, he tried to attack her, and she ended up having to put him down. Ended up shooting him with a gun. There was countless video clips that I would see of, and it was one in particular. I believe it was maybe a Staples store or something where you deal with copy machines and print up documents or whatever. And the store had the plexiglass between each printer. So now you have 2 black women, an older black woman and a younger black woman. The younger black woman is not wearing a mask. The older black woman, who sees her not wearing a mask, takes it upon herself to go ahead and confront her, even though there's a plexiglass that they tell you can keep you safe. There's a division between the two of you, and the one thing that you notice is all these people who are so afraid of the virus, and this is what lets you know this is a blatant contradiction and it doesn't make any sense. If you were that afraid, you would just simply remove yourself. But to go ahead and confront somebody and to get into a closer proximity than a 6-foot range of distance, that every single Democratic governor or mayor or elected official was telling you that you needed to maintain between you and the next person, they would violate that space just for the sole purpose of confronting somebody that you don't know, a complete stranger, someone that you have no say-so or no authority over, to tell them they need to put on a mask. What was that about? And even to a point when I looked at that video, it led to the younger black woman beating up the older black female. Now, at this point, I didn't care, because if you're that stupid to go ahead and think that you got rights over somebody else to tell them what they can and can't do, and this is stuff that they normally do on a regular basis, but now because somebody else told you that this is a problem and told you you're supposed to do it, not the cops now. Now, mind you, now when the cops were doing this in New York City, they eventually stopped that because it led to assault, it led to unnecessary police brutality, so they put a stop to it. So they figured, okay, we'll just deputize the citizens to go ahead and be the watch eye for us. This is the only reason that I can think of that you would do something like this, or even tell somebody to do something like this. These governors knew what they were doing was putting people in danger by trying to deputize random citizens to go ahead and confront those who were either not wearing a mask, who were having more than 6 people in their homes, who weren't engaging in social distancing. They knew this would become a problem, but they went ahead and still attempted to deputize them. Why? Remember, this is all about a game of momentum. The more people that you have, the better off you can pull this off. The more people you get to believe in your nonsense, the better off you can pull this off. I want you also to remember some talking points that I made when I made those videos back in 2020. Now, those videos I've removed them, so you probably won't be able to find them, because as I stated, YouTube went ahead and flagged down one of the videos I made in early 2021. So in order to keep them from taking the whole channel down and finding other stuff that they can flag and getting my channel strike after strike and then taking it down, I said, let me just get rid of the videos so they don't have nothing that they can use against this channel. So those videos you most likely won't be able to find. But anyhow, what I stated in those videos that I made when I traveled through the city, a ghost town, everyone is inside scared of some virus. But what I stated also in those videos was, even when it came down to the whole moon landing, and there was plenty of things that I questioned, and listen, I don't believe they ever landed on the moon. And I know plenty of other people who feel the exact same way. Now, I'm not going to get into the reasons as of why I question the whole moon landing. What I will say is this. Because people will say, well, over 400,000 people were involved with the moon landing. It would take quite a bit to keep every last one of these people to remain quiet about this, don't you think? So how could it be a lie? And you have this many people involved with it? Because there's no way in hell every last one of them would keep this secret to them. And I said, listen, my response back to that is simple. You can have 400,000 people involved with it, but you only have a handful of engineers who engineered the whole thing. And the engineers, they know if we're going to get people on board with this, they don't need to know the intrinsic details. They don't have to know everything that took place. They just have to believe that what they're a part of is legit. That is all they need to know. Only a handful of people need to know that this landing didn't actually happen. Because if we can convince them that what they are doing is legit, then hey, we don't have to do anything. It carries itself out. That's what I mean when I say the momentum. And there's no better example of this than what took place back in 2020 with the pandemic. How many people were running around scared shitless? How many people did they get to believe things despite the fact that they were contradicting themselves from one moment to the next? I mean, you had Anthony Fauci, who some of you buffoons still listen to and take legitimately, who was lied from one moment to the next. First he comes out and listen, you can't classify this as misinformation because this has been documented. We all seen this on mainstream media. We're not talking about social media. This was on mainstream media, where you had Anthony Fauci initially telling people that you should not be walking around wearing a mask. Then he contradicts himself, and months later comes back out and says, well, now you should wear a mask. And then when you think of the vague, feeble, asinine excuses that they give you to, as if, okay, Mr. Fauci, why is it that you can contradict yourself? In 1 minute you say we shouldn't be wearing a mask. Now you're saying we should be wearing a mask now. And the excuse was, well, we didn't want to have a shortage of masks for the medical workers. So that's why I went ahead and said this. Are you serious? Even though nothing about that makes sense, because there was never a shortage of masks from what I remember. You could always get a mask. Hell, they were telling you could tie a piece of cloth around your face and that can constitute as a mask and do the same effect. This is what they were saying. Then he went from you should wear a mask to maybe you could wear 2 masks as an extra layer of protection. Just literally making things up as they go along. None of it makes any damn sense. And the thing is, what you notice about these people is when you question their blatant hypocrisy, they then give you a bunch of word salad that means absolutely nothing to take you right back to nowhere. But yet they're telling you you need to listen to what we're saying. But you're not making any fucking sense. You're inconsistent. And at no point in time will they actually admit to this. But yet and still to this day, you still got people wearing masks. Because now they're talking about another variant. Even though these people, well, you can, if you just look at the inconsistencies, that will give you a logical conclusion that you can't trust what you're hearing. But you still have dumbass people who will follow this. This is a part of what I mean when I say you don't have to have everybody know exactly what's going on and all the intrinsic details. You only need to have a handful of people engineering this and orchestrating this and get the rest of the masses to believe that what they're doing is a legitimate thing. Just like people who are pro-vaccination. And if you don't get the vaccine, you should lose your job. Because why? You are killing people. They referred to a couple of people on social media who spoke out against the vaccine as a disinformation dozen. Risa Islam being one of them. I think R.F. Kennedy Jr. being another one, if I'm not mistaken. Another doctor who died recently, I think it was back in April of this year. And what they started saying, they just started throwing things out here. Well, you know what? These people are killing people. This is what Joe Biden came out and said himself. They're killing people by giving disinformation. Even though there's no proof of this, there's nothing that they can say, okay, this is how you got. They have nothing, because if they were killing people, you would actually have them charged. And you can't charge them because you can't prove that they actually killed anybody. Just like when it came down to those who weren't wearing masks and how they demonized them, they would classify them as super spreaders. And then you had dumbass, stupid people running around saying this. You're a super spreader. Hell, there was a video that Lisa Cabrera showed on her channel back at that time. And what was it? I believe you had a Hispanic lady, two Hispanic ladies sitting down at a beach somewhere. I think they were more off toward the woods. And this white female came along, and she had to be held back by her own family members because she was going in and yelling and screaming at these Hispanic women for sitting down and not wearing a mask. And what did the white woman say? The white woman said, people like you are the reason that people like me will never get out of this situation because you won't wear a mask, despite the fact that she herself wasn't even wearing a mask. So they literally were causing this division between people. And what they wanted to see is how many people can we get on board to go along with nonsense. And they seemed they had a height of success when it came down to this. How many people can we shame into getting the vaccine? And what was it that Joe Biden said when he mandated the vaccines back in 2021? He told the American citizens, like a true dictator, even though he does not fit the description of one. This is probably the weakest, pathetic old man I've ever seen in my life, but that's beside the point. After he gave his speech telling people that either get your vaccine or lose your job, he sat up on that podium and said, "We've been patient thus far, but our patience is wearing thin, and your hesitancy has cost us all." This is what Joe Biden said. I mean, I don't need to go ahead and pull up a clip of him saying this shit. I mean, we all seen this, for those who were paying attention. What was he doing? He was literally demonizing those who did not take the vaccine, despite the fact there's no proof. Just like they were saying, and just listen to some of the talking points, even when the pandemic was going on. And I want you to notice how one in particular talking point has just vanished ever since 2020, since the rollout of the vaccines. Or toward the end of 2020, I should say. What was one of the common things that they were saying? And this is how they get people to go along with nonsense. They don't have to show every last person. They don't have to show the world how this whole thing initially started. They just have to convince the masses that what you are doing is saving lives. This is why they were depicting people as heroes. All of this theatrics that they were doing, they would have bus drivers just blow the horn as essential workers, calling them heroes. Train operators, locomotive engineers, toot the horn in support of the medical workers. All of this theatrics that they were doing to convince people that this was a real tragedy of what's going on, and the people who are not going along with this, see, they're the real problem now. Now, mind you, now, supposedly the virus came from China. They didn't want to blame China. Donald Trump was the only one saying, no, this is where it came from. And you had, who was it that was saying, why do you keep saying this? Democrats. They wouldn't call out the source of where this actually came from and said, this is your fault. They wouldn't demonize China, but they would have no problem demonizing an American citizen who simply chose not to wear a mask. They would have no problem demonizing an American citizen. I want you to think about the talking points of what took place here. And then a talking point that they use, and this is an initial point I was going to make a second ago, is this is the talking point that has vanished now from their vocabulary. Because when the whole pandemic started, what were they saying? For those who weren't wearing masks, and people are like, well, I don't have any symptoms, I'm good. Why do I need to wear a mask? Well, you're just asymptomatic. But you're a super spreader if you choose not to wear a mask, despite the fact they haven't tested you to find out whether you have COVID. So how can you even prove this? But they're classifying people who weren't wearing masks as super spreaders. If there is no other greater case of disinformation, if that's not a disinformation, I don't know what else is. But now if you simply oppose their talking points, they will label you as disinformation and even put you in with the disinformation doesn't. This is what they were doing. Shutting down YouTube accounts, shutting down social media accounts. Hell, like I told you, they flagged the video of mine down. That's the reason why all the videos I made pertaining to the pandemic, I took them down. Because I knew that they would just try to go after other ones, and I got to be careful on what I say here. But the reason why I'm mentioning this and being a bit long-winded the way I am is because I want you to understand this is based off of momentum. How many people can we get to go along with an agenda? How can we convince them? We don't need to show them the details on how this has all been started. We just need to convince them that what they are doing is for a good cause. And if we can demonize those who are questioning this, who aren't going along with this, and how do we do that? We say that, hey, he's the reason, the person right there not wearing a mask, that's the reason why your loved one has COVID. That's the reason why you're getting sick. That's the reason why we can't go from these lockdowns. We got to stay here because of these people, even though that this is what they wanted all along. And see, like I told you, stupid people who serve no purpose in life, who've never had any real significance, who've never had any authority, they feel for once in their life they actually serve a purpose. And if that means throwing their neighbor under the damn bus because you won't wear a mask, they'll go ahead and they'll do it. You got more than 6 people in a gathering, well, I'm going to throw you under the bus. I'm going to call the police on you. This is what they'll do. And this is how they can test the momentum. How much momentum can we build up behind this? To see if we can launch what it is that we really want to do, what we ultimately want to do. Because the more people we can convince with this, is the more success we will have at trying to initiate or launch what it is that our ultimate agenda. But see, for those who are critical thinkers like myself, you know this was piss poorly orchestrated. It's almost as if a bunch of 3-year-olds were sitting here putting this whole thing together. This is how stupid it was done. It makes absolutely no sense. So many contradictions, it's not even funny. Just like when it comes down to vaccine safety, right? And I need to be careful with this. But the main talking point that they stated is safe and effective. Safe and effective. No matter how many times you challenge it, showcase proof and studies of what they put out here, or what you could go to a legitimate website and verify for yourself. Whether it be with injuries, deaths, you can showcase this to them and they will tell you, no, that's not it. Safe and effective. It's like, well, wait a second. Are you going to even acknowledge what I'm showcasing you here? Are you going to respond back to what I'm presenting to you here? Or is your only response safe and effective? And what they do is they use the same repetitious talking points over and over and over, because what they're doing is they're trying to ingratiate this into your psyche. So you don't no longer question actual facts. You no longer actually question results. You just go off of the talking points that you heard. They're hoping that you're going to be a zombie and just recite it. This is why they say it over and over and over again. And it really is a piss poor tactic, because I'm going to tell you the reason why these are piss poor tactics, because it goes against your instincts. For those who are using your instincts, it goes against survival. When people can see all of these reactions, and then when people say, okay, pull out the vaccine injury reports, when they're asking the CDC to present this, and they're saying it's going to take us 50 to 70 years to release that data. Are you serious? But you release the vaccine in less than 6 months? Once again, so many inconsistencies. You would think that a bunch of 3-year-olds were putting this whole thing together. And that right there just only confirms that you're hiding something. I mean, what kind of shit show are we dealing with here? So once again, you have to now conclude that people who are dumb enough to still go along with these talking points, that no, there is something wrong with you. And you are something. That's why I've told black people, when it comes down to people still backing the agenda of the Democratic Party, at some point, you need to stop having discussions with them. At some point, you need to stop arguing with them and realize them for who and what they are. You're a problem. You're an enemy. You're a traitor. There's nothing I need to argue with you about anymore. I don't have to hold a single fucking debate. Because everything that I've stated back in 2020 has come to fruition, and some. These are facts. But now let me get back to what is being taking place with the vaccine. So when people are questioning, when they pull out the data, the risks to benefits data, and the numbers are high when it comes down to the injury reports. I mean, you got... I need to be careful on how I'm going to word this here, but let me just try to say it in this manner right here. When you present this to them and say, hey, this is what we're looking at right now. Can you explain what would be the benefit of me getting this vaccine when the majority of people have already caught COVID? And like I said, for those who didn't go into a hospital, stayed home, managed to make a full recovery. They will still tell you, well, the best defense against COVID is the vaccine. Even though myocarditis is affiliated with this, people have caught that. Even though blood clots, strokes, heart attacks, all of these things are affiliated with that vaccine. And once again, I need to be careful what I'm saying here, because we know that YouTube would love to take this video down and flag it. And I might actually, no, let me not even get to that talking, but let me just say this. So all of these things are associated with the vaccine, and it's like, well, wait a second, if I catch COVID on my own, unvaccinated, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to make a full recovery. So why are you telling me I need to take this, but if I take this vaccine, okay, it'll protect me against COVID, but then again, I could catch a heart attack, I could have blood clots, all of these issues. And listen, I know people personally who have had reactions upon taking that vaccine. And when you showcase this, there really is, I'll ask the question here. Do you think that there's a benefit in taking that? Would it be, is it something that you would want to take after finding all of this out? Because it seems like, just everything is not pointing in a favorable direction when you really think about this. And see, you go look on mainstream media news outlets, and they'll confirm this for you. But yet at the same time, still tell you, well, you still need to take it because it's the best thing that you can do. Well, wait a second. Hold on. Because at first you said that if you get the vaccine, you won't catch COVID, you won't pass COVID, you can't spread COVID, you won't have any symptoms. Okay, now all of a sudden we found out that none of that is true. Because people who have taken the vaccine still have caught COVID, still have symptoms, and can spread it. So what would actually be the benefit in me taking this? They can't even specify a benefit as of why you should take it. And after you've showcased all of this to them, they won't actually respond back to what you said. What they'll tell you is, well, it's the best defense against COVID. Well, it seems like the best defense is to actually recover from it on your own, because you haven't pointed out any tangible benefit upon taking the vaccine. As a matter of fact, what it really seems like is I'm at greater risk behind taking this damn thing. And despite the fact that you can present all of this information, they'll sit here and give you a bunch of empty word salad, not addressing what you say not one time, but telling you still the best defense against COVID is by getting vaccinated. And then all of a sudden, here we are, all of these different strands coming out, new variants. They were doing this in 2020. Now the previous shot that you took is no longer effective. Take this booster. Another variant out this year now. Well, the first 5 shots that you've taken is no longer effective. As a matter of fact, you'll be more likely to catch COVID upon being vaccinated. Well, hold on. What are we talking about here? This is what we're dealing with. And listen, I'm long-winded with this, and I need to be careful with my wording. I might have already said too much. But upon everything that I've presented to you, I'm only reciting what I've seen on mainstream media, what I've heard on mainstream media, not from some YouTuber, but I'm talking about legitimate news networking sites. The question that I would then ask you now is, out of all of that word salad that I've just given you, can you point out where there's actual benefit? Is this something that you still think is worthy to go ahead and take this shot? Would you want to put this in your body for those who haven't done it? Or for those who have done it, would you want to go ahead and take another booster? Is this something that you want to give to your children? And then we seen immediately that they were just approving this to give it to 6-month-olds, 5-year-old. I mean, are you serious? Despite the fact that these were the least likely to catch COVID. I mean, the virus, once again, think about it, had less than a 1% death rate. Why are we vaccinating everybody? The majority of people make a full recovery on their own and have a boosted immune system upon catching the virus. I caught this thing last year, and I have not one time caught a cold since I've caught COVID. But yet these people will tell you still, despite the fact that you have a boosted immune system, you still need to go ahead and get this vaccine. What you listen to is a bunch of jumping through hoops, a bunch of empty word salad, and if you listen to it from them, it's a bunch of nothing. And despite the fact that they have not proven that there is not one benefit in it for you to go ahead and take this thing, they still are going to tell you that you need to take this. This is just the type of insanity that we're dealing with. And listen, just the word that I'm using alone can get this video flagged. Because they don't want me talking like this. Now, with that being stated, when people are sitting back co-signing this and saying you need to go ahead and get this, and for those who haven't gotten this, you're getting people sick, you're getting people killed, you can't come to my cookout because you didn't get vaccinated, you can't come into my house because you didn't get vaccinated. They started causing division. This is a matter of a test to see how far can we go. How many stupid people can we get on board with our nonsense? This is what this is. And the more dumbass people we can get on board with our nonsense, that is going to be the easier it is for us to push the ultimate agenda of what we really want to do. When it comes down to these elites, these buffoons like Bill Gates, Klaus Schwab, names that you don't really hear of too. Well, you hear of Bill Gates, but Klaus Schwab, he's kind of in hiding to a degree, but now it's starting to be talked about more and more. A jackass that not many people know of. And I don't think I've known of him up until, 2020, or maybe a few years prior to that. I've heard some mentions of his name, but didn't know who the hell this clown really was. The same jackass who sits up here and tells you that you will own nothing and be happy. Yeah. See, the thing is, they're trying to gather up the momentum of people, the wave of nonsense, because they understand that their numbers are not big enough to go ahead and do what they want to do. And if they can't get people on board, they're in a whole lot of trouble. They know this. So the way they go about doing things, empower the stupid, empower the idiots, find things that placate to their emotions, and that way we can get them on board. They don't have to know what we're up to having these World Economic Forum meetings, secret discussions that only a handful of people could come to. They don't know nothing about that, and they don't need to. They just have to believe that what we're pushing for them is for their benefit. This is what it really is about. And this is another reason why I've told you in the past, stupid people are dangerous. Stupid people can and will get you killed. This is why I don't even waste my time affiliating with willfully stupid people. A willfully stupid jackass is somebody that still says they're going to go out here and cast a vote for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris despite the chaos and the catastrophe that they have caused. At this point in time, there is no excuses that you can give me. It's inexcusable for you to sit back and say, I didn't know they were doing all of this, because it's right now. It's so egregious and so blatant. There's no way in hell even a handicapped person can see this. In so many different spaces I can go to, and I can play a video clip. The other day I had some work being done in my home, and I had a video clip, and they were playing something about Joe Biden, him stumbling, mumbling, bumbling like the idiot that he is. And the person that was doing the work, he's focusing on what he's doing, but he's laughing. He's like, yeah, it's correct. So I don't even have to be discreet about what I'm listening to, because everyone can see this. Because it's so obvious now. So when you come across those who say, oh, I'm going to go there for Biden Harris, you know that you're a danger. You are a danger to yourself, and you are a danger to others around you. I don't care to explain nothing to you. I don't care to have a discussion with you. I just need to make sure that I can insulate myself from your stupidity. And if it means removing you out of my life permanently, that is exactly what I'll do. I feel no ways about it. Because you can't be this stupid going from 2023 into 2024. You can't be this dumb, this naive, this gullible, and think that you can go out here and participate in this catastrophe. No, we just can't do that. But just understand, this is a means of momentum. Also, what I want y'all to pay attention to, and I mentioned this earlier, is how you notice that the whole asymptomatic talking points, that has just gone out the window. This just goes to show you how they have completely just switch up the script. Even if it makes no sense, has no consistency, you can't link it from one to the other because there's absolutely no consistency. It is a blatant contradiction. But this is what they've done. Now, I mentioned all of this and take you through that mumble jumble of word salad that I'm reciting out of your liberal playbook, to go ahead and show you how, because I'm going to segue into the whole AI and whatnot. Because when you talk about AI, this takes a lot of intelligence. And when you talk about downloading your consciousness, somebody's consciousness into a hard drive, that takes advanced intelligence. So now you figure anything that demonstrates this level of intelligence, that there would be consistency with this, a pattern with this. And this is something that I also talk about consistently in my productions, is pattern recognition. And we've seen how piss poor and how sloppy the whole pandemic, how that all went down. And I've worked in many different fields throughout my career, and I've seen this sloppy, piss poor coordination that we witnessed take place during the pandemic. This is not the only area where this has actually happened. We see this taking place in local government. We see this happen you got Joe Biden as your president. I mean, this guy is the best that they could come up with as the leader of the free world is Joe Biden. And we see the type of bumbling idiot that he is. The guy can't even speak a coherent sentence without making a goddamn fool of himself, constantly and consistently making a fool of himself on a grand stage in front of the whole damn world. I mean, this is ridiculous at this point in time. And you see how ridiculous that Democrats are. I mean, Joe Biden is not only a liability to himself, but he's a liability to this nation. And just to go ahead and showcase how disconnected, and the Democratic Party, they're running a playbook for the elites. We know that they're the front runners for the elites. And to show how disconnected they are from reality, these people tried to run Kamala Harris back in 2019. They tried to push her off as a black woman, saying that she had all of this. She was the first high-ranking candidate that had strong chances on winning the presidential election. The first black woman. They gave her all of this hype. And before a single vote was casted, she had already dropped out of the race. So not only did you have black people that say that, okay, we don't want Kamala Harris, we don't like Kamala Harris, but you also had the American people that let it be known that we don't like Kamala Harris and we don't want her as president. If your Democrats were smart, if this administration, if the Democratic Party was ran by competent people, they would have picked up on this right away and they would have course corrected. But instead of them doing that, they figured, no, we're going to disregard what it is that the people are telling us. Now, mind you, we need them to go out here and win elections so we can stay in power. But rather than listening to what they're telling us, we're going to tell them what they want. And we think if we just say it enough times and repeat it enough damn times, that we can use these Jedi mind tricks to convince them of this. So what do? They get Kamala Harris as Joe Biden's running mate. Despite the fact that now these two are the most disliked president and vice president that we've ever seen. I mean, this is just what we're dealing with. Joe Biden put together a cabinet of incompetence, and what showcases just how disconnected and how incompetent the Democratic Party really is. If they were smart, they would have picked up on the fact that, okay, Joe Biden is not liked. There's no way we can say this. He's done too much. He's incompetent. He's weak. And he demonstrates this in front of the whole damn world. Nobody wants that as their leader. If they were smart, they would have said, you know what? Okay, we would either invoke the 25th Amendment and get his ass out of here. Or since we don't want Kamala Harris to be president, we'll let him finish out his 4-year term and that's it, you're done. You're gonna only be a one-term president. But they are so incompetent, so stupid, so disconnected from reality that they decided, hey, it's a good idea to run his ass again for re-election. Now they're realizing that nobody wants Joe Biden. They say he's neck and neck with Donald Trump. I don't believe that. I believe Donald Trump is beating him. But they're going to say this to make people think that he has the chances of winning because we know that how dishonest they are. And now all of a sudden they realize, oh shit, we might be in trouble with this guy. We can't get this guy over the hump again for a second term. This is why they're trying to bring Barack Obama's rud ass out here to go ahead and campaign for this guy. I showed y'all the videos in the last production that I made. Barack Obama looking tired and washed up as he is, going out here selling you a bunch of empty word salad. And think about it, what did he say in those videos? When he talked about Joe Biden's climate accord Green Deal. What the hell is he saying? You did that, people, you did that. See, they're telling you a bunch of nothing. And they expect you to go out here and vote for them. See, people who are smart and understand that, okay, I need people's support in order for me to stay in power. You are going to give something to the people that they can have a reason to say, okay, we could go out and support you. Joe Biden has given nothing. And his stupid ass is sitting here trying to get more money for the Ukraine. I mean, at this point in time, this is absurd. This is disrespectful. A lot of people were running around saying Donald Trump is going to get us into another war. This didn't happen under Trump. But Joe Biden directly got us into a war with Russia. Now, people will say, well, we're not in a war. Well, it's coming. Because what Joe Biden has did, and listen, if you were to have discussions with these Democrats, this is another just an example of the word salad they're going to run on you. He didn't get us into no war. Okay, you got two people fighting with each other. Just imagine, you got two people, two of your friends. If you got two people that you know that are about to get ready to throw down in the fight, you can remain neutral if you decide to pull the two of them apart and say, I'm not going to sit back and watch the two of y'all fight. You didn't take a side. You can remain neutral if you stood by and did nothing, let them just duke it out. But if you decide that you were going to now start giving resources to one party in that fight, then you have taken a side. If you decide, okay, I'm going to throw you a set of brass knuckles, a knife, a bat, a stick, a spoon, you have then taken a side as of who you are supporting and who you're rocking with. So now, even though you were neutral with both of them at one point, or maybe friends with both of them at one point, and the one person that sees that you are supporting this other person, what are they going to think of you? Even if you were to say, okay, well, I'm going to give this guy money to help him in support of his fight. You've taken a side. But if you have a discussion with Democrats, they're going to tell you, well, this isn't no war, you ain't take no side. They're going to tell you, don't trust your lying eyes. Don't believe what you see. Even though they can't debunk what it is that you've just seen, because you really can't refute what's being seen here. So you have Joe Biden, who is once again asking for more taxpayer dollars to send billions more to the Ukraine, but yet this stupid ass is sitting up in one of his YouTube videos asking people to donate $5 to his campaign. This is egregious at this point in time. At this point, you have to conclude, dude, you're trolling the American people. You couldn't possibly think that one person will be stupid enough to donate to you with all the chaos that you caused. And then when you look at the videos that he makes, he talks about, well, we got a lot done so far. Okay, what did you get done? That's my question. But then they'll follow up and say, we got a lot done so far, but we got to finish the job. Yeah, finish the job. Finish the job with his incoherent self. What is that job that they plan on finishing? That's the question that y'all really need to ask. I'm kind of long-winded with this here, but I'm just trying to give you quite a few examples on how they're going to use empty word salad. You can present to them a direct talking point, something that you can show them, something that you can prove, something that you can touch. And when you ask them to respond to this, make sense out of what we are seeing, because on one hand, you're saying that our lives have gotten that much better, but there's no example that indicates that. They're going to give you a bunch of empty word salad and give you a bunch of nothingness and tell you that your life has gotten better. This is just how incompetent they are. And then when you think about Joe Biden's cabinet, you figure a smart individual understands that as smart as you might be, that you still don't know everything. So what do? You go out and you get people that have experience in the fields that you might not necessarily have experience in. Because in those fields, if something comes up and you don't know anything about it, you got competent people around you that can inform you of these things. So you don't make a goddamn fool out of yourself on the world stage, as Joe Biden has done time and time again. So what does he do? He decides to put forth the most diverse cabinet getting LGBT members, black women, transsexuals, a whole bunch of foolishness. People of other races, not getting people who would be the best for the job, the most competent people for the job, which is what a president should do. But he'd rather have this diverse coalition of mixed nuts, this can of mixed nuts that he has in the White House, and what lets you know that he has turned this into a circus. And listen, I don't have any vested interest into the White House, the nation's capital. I don't have no vested interest into any of these facilities. But I do understand that if something is supposed to stand for something, it has historical meaning. You don't then turn around and disrespect it by allowing foolishness into the White House. And what did he do during Pride Month? He allowed a transgender who literally flashed his Jesus Christ. Listen, the bottom line is he's the first president and the only president that I've seen to hang up the pride flag on the White House. The White House does not stand for that. That's not what it was founded off of. So therefore, it should not be on the White House. But he's hanging the pride flag on the White House, literally making a mockery, a joke out of the White House, letting a transgender in there who doesn't even know how to conduct themselves, who made the entire LGBT community look ridiculous. This is what you're dealing with. You have the most incompetent president sitting in the White House that this nation has ever seen. And instead of getting people who know what they're doing, he gets people like I forgot the transgender's name, I think, who's supposed to be the Secretary of Energy. My question would be is, how much experience does this individual have in energy? It wouldn't surprise me if they have no experience, none whatsoever. You got Pete Buttigieg, who is supposed to have governance over the transportation industry. I don't know exactly what his title is or what it's called, but he deals with the transportation industry, if I'm speaking correctly. My question would be to him is, how much experience does Pete Buttigieg have in transportation? Has Pete Buttigieg ever driven a bus in his life? Has he ever operated a train in his life? Was he a locomotive engineer? Was he a captain of a ship? Did he fly planes? Was he a dispatcher at some point in time of his life? This is what I want to know. And it wouldn't surprise me if none of these people have any experience in the fields that they operate in. And this is what should let you know what you are dealing with when it comes down to your politicians, and why you got to question, why the hell are you governing my life, making decisions over what goes on in my life? The average citizen has more experience than your stupid asses do. But these are the people who are making decisions over the lives of America, over millions of people in this damn country. It is a complete and utter embarrassment. So I'm showcasing another example where you have blatant incompetence, which are the people who are governing this nation. Mitch McConnell, I mean, how many times is he going to freeze up in front of the grand stage before we realize, okay, God, you need to step down? This is what you have, a bunch of geriatric senior citizens making decisions over people that they can't even relate to, who probably have never done a day's worth of work, a day's worth of labor, never turned a wrench a day in their life, never had to fix anything, never had to work in the mechanical field, the energy field, the heating field, nothing. But they are making decisions on how you get to heat your home. They are making decisions on what kind of car you should be able to drive on the road. Just a bunch of damn foolishness. This is incompetence. This is ridiculous at this point in time. They are pushing for a bunch of meaningless agendas that are not sustainable, like this electric vehicle agenda. And I'm going to tell y'all this much right now. For those of you who think the electric vehicles are the way to go, the best and most reliable vehicles, and the vehicles that you're going to get the most bang for your buck on, are going to be those with internal combustion engines, whether it be gasoline or whether it be diesel. Those are the best vehicles that you can stick with. So them trying to push this agenda, oh yeah, you can drive a Tesla. I'm sure it drives like a dream. I'm sure it has all of these luxurious features inside of it. But it is not the most reliable. You're not going to get the most bang for your buck. You are putting yourself in a marginalized situation. And what do I mean by that? How long does it take to charge up a car on batteries? Probably takes at least 2 hours at a bare minimum. That's probably when you first buy it out of the lot and drive it off that lot. Every time you charge a battery, that battery loses somewhat of its charge. It doesn't hold the same charge as it once did as when you first got it. It's not the same when it comes down to an engine that runs on gasoline or diesel. Then the next thing is, okay, if you are in a crunch, if you're in a crunch, how long does it take for you to charge that car? If you got to be somewhere and get up and go right away, how long does it take you to charge that car, the battery of that car? Then the question that you would have to ask in comparison to that is, how long does it take for you to fill up your gas tank? You can fill up a gas tank that has 20 gallons, that holds a 20-gallon gas tank in less than 5 minutes, or 5 minutes exactly, and be on the road and go to where you got to go. Even if you can't fill the damn tank up and you only got, let's say, 2 minutes, a minute, 30 seconds to fill up, you can probably fill up that tank enough to the point where you can travel for a bit before you have to go ahead and fill it again. You can't do that with an electric car. Can you put 2 minutes of a charge on that car and that battery is good to go to get you to work and back home? No. So why would anybody think that this is a good investment? But this is what they're trying to sell you on. This is what your politicians are trying to sell you on. They're trying to tell you that these things are good for the environment, but electricity that charges the batteries comes from internal combustion engines or sealed combustion boilers that runs on what? The same fuel that they don't want you to put in your car. This is the nonsense. It's blatant contradiction. Let's just think about the electric car industry for a second. The only way they will be successful at getting everyone into an electric car is by not getting you into a car at all. See, this is what y'all are not understanding. So this is going to tie into AI and what everybody's sitting here believing. The only way they can pull off what they want to pull off is by restricting what you can do, restricting your movements, restricting what you can have. That's what this whole electric car is about. That means the majority of you who have cars will no longer have a car. You'll be riding a bus, moving on somebody else's schedule instead of your own. And there'll be limits to how far you can go if they actually get what they want to pull off. Because the electric vehicle is not sustainable. Think about it. If you were to hook up every single car or take everybody out of their internal combustion engine cars and get them into electric vehicles, first of all, it takes at least 2 hours to charge up one of these cars. How long are you in a gas station? Gas stations are pretty occupied. It's frequent activity, constant activity going on in the gas station. You can get in and out in 2 minutes, 5 minutes, fill up your tank, you're gone. The next person could come in, and it's just a constant revolving door. You can't do that with an electric car. Even if you had 100 charging stations, if it's taking people hours on end just to charge up a car, guess what? Them cars ain't going nowhere anytime soon. Okay, well, you know what? Fine. Let's go ahead and we'll just upgrade where people park out in the street. We will put electric charging stations where they park at. That's not sustainable either. Why? The electric grid, the power lines, whether it runs underground in the sewer or whether it runs overhead, they're not built to handle that much capacity. Now, see, what they'll tell you when it comes down to electric cars is, well, you can save all of this money. But here's what they're not telling you when it comes down to saving all of that money. People who have these electric cars, in many cases, they're charging them up at their jobs. They're charging them up at facilities where they're not even paying for it. So that's how they're saving money. And I've seen this time and time again. People go right to you'll have managers that pull up right near them to the company that they work at and just plug the car up. So the company is actually paying to charge that car and is now using that electric bill as a tax write-off. That's how they're getting the savings. Because they actually had to go home and charge these cars on their own each time they use it and pay for every single charge or every ohm or amperage or voltage of electricity that they use to power that vehicle. That's going to come up more than the amount of the gas that you put in the damn car. And you're not going to get the same bang for your buck. So you can keep believing this if you wanted to. But in order for them to go ahead and set up this whole thing, if they wanted to get everyone in electric vehicles, you're going to have to increase the power grid. You would have to upgrade the electrical lines, adding more and bigger electrical lines, whether it be overhead or underground. You have to supply more power, which means what? Where does the power come from? It doesn't come from dams. Very rarely does it come from that. There's only a handful of places that have that. Very rarely does it come from windmills. Windmills are not the most reliable source of energy. Solar panels are not the most reliable source of energy. But what is an absolute reliable source of energy? The internal combustion engine. Because you can power that or you can fuel that thing all year long, no matter what the weather conditions are. What is the next reliable thing? Which really should be the first thing, which is the sealed combustion boiler. This is how they're producing energy. So if they start having a larger demand for energy, for electricity production, that means you're going to have either more engines or more boilers that are running on diesel or natural gas, or both. So once again, okay, maybe you're not polluting by actually driving the car, but just to charge the car, yeah, you're still adding in the same amount of pollution. So where did the savings go? It makes no sense. None of this makes any sense, because it all revolves right back around. It brings you back to the same source. And if y'all were paying attention, I actually demonstrated this when it came down to the talks about the vaccine. Oh, well, you don't need to be in a car because it pollutes. But when it comes down to the electric car, it boils right back down to the same source, what you're trying to get rid of, which is actually the pollution. But you still need that source in order to charge that car. Make that make sense. This is what you're dealing with. This is the level of insanity of what you're dealing with. And they know they're not going to spend all the money to upgrade the electrical system. They're not going to upgrade the electrical infrastructure. So what it really means is, well, 15-minute cities. Have y'all heard of that? Because I've been paying attention to it. That can only work the more stupid people they can get on board with this. Also, that would also mean that the majority of people, you don't ride a car. You don't drive a car. The car, you have access only to a bus, and when they say you could get on that bus. This goes into the AI, and this is the perfect segue. And before I even say that, let me just reference the industries that I've worked in. I'm not going to mention where, but I have witnessed such incompetence in my work career that is not even funny. I've witnessed things that don't even make sense. And when you ask them, why do you do these things? Because it doesn't make sense. They can't give you a sensible answer. A lot of these industries are funded by taxpayer dollars. A lot of the railroads, or all of the railroads, are funded by taxpayer dollars. If I'm not mistaken, the Long Island Railroad has not turned a profit in over 40 years. No passenger railroad in this country turns a profit. The transportation hubs that have the buses and trains and so forth and so on, they do not turn a profit. They are subsidized by taxpayer dollars. And when I've looked at many of the industries that I've been in, I've seen many things that literally make no sense. And this level of incompetence goes on in damn near every facet that you look at. And I want you to pay attention, because I had recognized pattern recognition, and we talk about AI and artificial intelligence. Key word, you need somebody who has a highly skillful and intelligent, competent people to pull off to have the intelligence to download somebody's consciousness and store it into some kind of AI drive or a bot or some kind of cyborg. And thus far, I'm not seeing that. I don't see it in local governments. I don't see it on a national level. I just don't see it. I don't see it in local businesses. I don't see it. And I'm talking about essential things that are needed. I'm not seeing it. And now if you're going to look at me or tell me or respond back to me in a comment thread and say that what you're looking at right now, that this is complete competence, that listen, I got a bridge in Brooklyn I'll sell you for an even cheaper price. Like I told you, the pandemic was just one example on how piss poor and how sloppy all of this stuff was done. Blatant contradictions. And they backed themselves into a corner with all of the contradictions just to try to push an agenda. Let me also say this much real fast. All of this is based off of how many people can they get to go along and how many people are gullible enough to fall into the nonsense. We know that they're trying to talk about more lockdowns now and more vaccines. But here's what I do know. If I know nothing else about life, everything has its high points and its low points. Just like when you're first born, you got to climb. And there's a point where you physically get to the prime years of your life. And I'm talking about just your physical condition. You start off at the bottom, you excel up to that point to where you're at your prime. And depending on how you take care of your physical body will determine how long you stay there. But then there's going to be a point in time where those prime years are at an end. And you're on the decline, whether you like it or not. Now, it could be a slow decline or it could be a rapid decline, depending on what you do. But that's just the way life works, kind of like a pyramid. You have a steady, steep incline that you have to go up, and then you have a steep decline that you have to go back down. Just take a look at when this happened with the whole pandemic. Their ascent to the top was in between 2020 when this first started and 2021. All right? That's when it had its most momentum. It doesn't have the same momentum that it once did. It is now on a steady decline. You already reached the top of that pyramid and you weren't up there very long, and now everything is going back down. And what they are doing now is they're desperate. They're throwing any and everything to the wall and hoping that just something sticks. This is why you're looking at the shit that they're doing is so sloppy. They use the same redundant strategies, and clearly it's proven to them it's not working. But they don't know what to do because they're not creative. They're not talented. They have no ingenuity. So this is what I'm saying. When you see the incompetence, these are not intelligent people. These are just people who have money and can fund nonsense with their money. And this is what they're doing. And they're hoping that they can get the majority of people to get on board. This is what, and the way they do it is they try to fearmonger people. This is why they're trying to come out with a new variant. All of these variants that they came out with in 2021. But each and every one of these variants were less and less effective. Even if they were more transmissible, but their fatality rate was that much lower. I mean, the initial variant had less than a 1% death rate. And each one that came out after that had less of a death rate. You go figure this. So like I said, they're desperate. They're throwing any and everything to the wall and hoping that something sticks. Now, with that being stated, I want to talk about what Michi X mentioned, or what some people were saying to Michi X. And she was talking about AI trucks. They got cars that can drive themselves, and they got trucks that can drive themselves. Pretty soon they're not going to need you at the Walmarts. There's not even people there at the cashier. There are people there. They might not be at the cashier, and there might not be as many people there, but there are people there. All right? It's just like if you go inside of a boiler plant that has a bunch of massive boilers. Somebody is there throughout the course of that day. Even if they're not there at that moment, that plant is being monitored by somebody. That's just the way that goes down. So what I'm saying is, people are under the impression that these things are going to be operating themselves and they're not going to have any use for people being there. And no, these are machines. And machines do not do what people do not program them to do. Just that simple. Machines are reliant on people. Just that simple. So when you think about the whole AI trucks driving themselves, listen, I'll confirm that. They have AI trucks that drive themselves. They have even buses that can drive themselves. I've seen the videos of it years ago. You want to know the company that makes this bus that can drive itself? It's called New Flyer. You have all seen them. If you live in a metropolitan city, even if you don't, you have seen these buses. They manufacture buses for every major company, mass transportation company in this country. And they've had these buses. Well, I've seen the commercial, the video on YouTube for this years ago. Tell me, when was the last time any of you have ever seen a bus driving itself? Because I haven't. Hell, within a video on their channel, that was the only place that I've actually seen this bus. And it wasn't driving in some heavily dense populated area. It was in a controlled environment. So you now ask the question, like I said, once again, where has anybody seen these buses? Because if the bus was out, or if these buses were out on the road and in service, we know there's a bunch of transportation gurus. Somebody even classified me as one of them because I've gone out and filmed stuff like this in the past. Somebody would have had a video of this, and these guys know where the bus is going to be at, the number of the bus, the run number. They know all of this stuff. And they'll be there before the bus even gets there to take either videos or pictures. It doesn't exist. See, this is one of the talking points that Michi X was talking about when it comes down to the AI trucks and buses. And some guy, well, she said trucks. Now I'm bringing up buses. Because somebody asked her the question. I'm going to just say this much. I'm not disagreeing with what Michi X is saying. What I'm saying is to the extent in which they believe that this will take place, that's never going to happen. And I'll give you some reasons as of why. But one of the arguments that came up to her was, well, I guess somebody said, well, what if the truck breaks down? If it has a flat tire, this is why they still need people to do this. And she stated, well, they're not going to need you to do this. They can have AI come out and fix it. All right, let me respond to that. Excuse me. Let me just say this. So now you're talking about the AI doing mechanical work. Now take it from a man who has worked in many different fields, the mechanical field included. All right. And I can tell you, when it comes down to this work, if you ever were to go to school to take basic training on these things, you'll have a rule book, or you'll write down some notes, and that could be your rule book. And the instructor is going to give you basic instructions. You might leave that class thinking that you know it all. Once you get into the field, you might even have discussions with people who have been mechanics for years and think that you're teaching them something. And I'm going to tell you this much right now. Oh boy, hopefully this person stops blowing their horn. I'm going to tell you this much right now. If you go to a trade school and you go on the field and actually start trying to recite what you have learned in a trade school to the actual mechanic that you're working with, that's going to be the fastest way to piss them off. Because what they're going to tell you is, listen, what you learned in that school is completely different from what you're going to deal with out here. The best experience is on the field experience, hands-on experience. So they don't even want to hear what you learned in that school. Because they have so much experience, they know that, listen, what you were taught in there is not going to prepare you for what you are going to encounter out here. Now, in this case, we're talking about changing a tire. And I've seen some guys go out to change a tire on a trailer that's just been standing there. And in certain cases, that tire doesn't come off easily. The bolts won't come off. They're frozen in there. So these guys have to come out with saws, grinders, torches, cutting torches, every tool imaginable just to get this thing out. And it's a hassle. You have to have somebody that knows what they're... Oh my God. You have to have somebody that knows what they are doing and knows when what you were taught in that school or in that book does not work out the way it was intended, because not most of the time it doesn't go down that way. There's always something else that goes wrong, and you have to anticipate that and know how to go about dealing with that. AI is not programmed to do that. So they're not sending a bot out to go change somebody's damn tire. That's not going to happen. They're going to send out an actual person to go out and change that tire. AI is only going to do what it was programmed to do. Hold on one second. All right. I had to go figure out what the hell that horn blowing was about. So what I'm saying is, when it comes down to doing mechanical work, this is detailed work. Not any and everybody can go out and be a mechanic. And there's so many things that happen that you don't anticipate, and that going to a school is not going to prepare you for. You actually have to go out there and encounter these situations to actually know how you go about dealing with these situations. AI is only programmed to do what it is programmed to do, and when it comes across something that it can't do, or that it wasn't prepared for, guess what? It just stops. This is the same thing when it comes down to machinery. Machinery is programmed to do what it does, or what people program it to do. And if it encounters something else that's outside of that program, it typically just shuts down. So when we say that AI is going to come out here and the truck tire goes flat and they're going to send 2 mechanical AI androids or cyborgs to come out there and fix it, I'm telling you, that's not going to happen. As an example of this, you look at an assembly line when it comes down to building cars. Yeah, they have these machines are actually putting the cars together, putting the framework together, the engine parts together, or the engine inside of the vehicle itself. It's probably all done by a machine on an assembly line. But what happens once it gets off of that assembly line? A man has to go in there and fine-tune all of these things. Make sure the bolts are properly secured, torque down a certain specification. All of this stuff has to be done by a man. And you'll find machines assembling these cars But what happens when you take your car to the dealership to get a repair done, to get a tire changed, to get an oil change? The dealership should be the first place that you see these AI machines doing basic things like oil changes. That's a basic thing, but yet and still you don't see this. When you go into that dealership and you go to the mechanical portion of where they do all the repairs, you're going to find physical people, warm bodies who are in there working on these machines. Because an android, an AI, cyborg, or whatever you want to call it, is not sophisticated enough to the point where it can go in there and do what a man can actually do. So when people are under the impression that, oh man, the AI is going to be taking over. Okay, Michi X talked about how they were taking over in Walmart, stacking shelves, which are low skilled jobs. They're taking over in the fast food restaurants, flipping burgers, which once again are low skilled jobs. This is the only place where you're going to see AI actually might be able to do a takeover. But yet and still, don't believe for 1 second that you're going to go into a McDonald's and order yourself some food and it's all being done by AI and there ain't no person in there somewhere monitoring and governing those machines. There's always going to be a person or several people that are in there that are monitoring these things. A machine does not do what people don't program it to do. See, what they want to have you believe is that these machines, they're going to start developing a means of thinking for themselves and learning on their own, and we're going to be in trouble. I'm telling you, that's not going to happen. That's a mere distraction that they're trying to tell you. That's what this is. I'll give you an example. I had a discussion with a friend of mine, and he was talking about the writer's strike, the writer's strikes, the actors who are on strike now. And one of the things that he mentioned is that one of the problems that they're dealing with is AIs being used to replicate their faces to go ahead and make these movies. They don't need to have people do this anymore. The AI is writing all the scripts and whatnot. And now the people who run the movie industry are saying, this is what he told me. How true it is, I'm not exactly sure. I have not confirmed this. But if what he is saying is true, he's stating that AI is doing all this and they're not able to get paid and nobody's able to really get to the bottom of who's responsible behind this, because the people who run the movie industry are saying it's not us, it's AI. I want you to pay attention to that. And that's the guys. That's the hoax that's being run on you. It's not us, it's AI. And I'm telling you right now, a machine is not going to do more than what it was programmed to do by a man. It is just that simple. And take it from somebody who has worked in the mechanical industry, who has worked in the heating industry, railroad industry. Take it from somebody who's been in many different fields. There is no machine that they have that is that sophisticated. I've worked in boiler plants. Okay, now you've seen the videos I posted up over a decade ago. That was just a single boiler room. I've worked in boiler plants where you have huge, massive boilers. And we got more people blowing their damn horn. Jesus Christ. I guess everyone's coming home now. You have huge, massive boilers, in certain cases that stand up in 2 stories in height. Some of these were ran by advanced mechanical systems. Advanced computer systems. That's what I meant to say. Where it can tell you everything that the damn thing is doing. Tell you how big a flame you got inside of the combustion chamber, how much steam pressure you have inside of the steam drum, inside of the header, the temperature of the water, the temperature of the condensate coming back. It can tell you so many different things. But guess what? If something went wrong with that boiler, that system would shut down. And it didn't go ahead and troubleshoot and get itself back online. Okay, this is what happened. The PTFI, the pilot blew out. There was some dust in there. Let me go send the AI bot to go in there and clean that out. No, it stays off. And working in these fields, you can tell just by listening whether everything's good with your boiler plant or whether there's a problem. You can tell just by the sound of it before you even walk into the room. And you know when you're dealing with a good boiler plant is running well, before you even get into that room, you can hear the roar. It's a vague rumbling in the background that you hear, and it gets louder and louder the closer you get to it. Let you know, okay, all these boilers are running. The closer you get to the room, you usually start feeling heat. And when you open up that door, you feel the heat blowing right at you. This is how you know your boiler plant is running good. That's just one sign. And I'm just giving you things on a general perspective here. because there's other things that you have to indicate or find out whether this thing is actually running properly. But when you know something is wrong with that boiler plant, when you head down to that boiler plant and you hear silence, it's almost like kind of like an eerie silence and an eerie kind of cool in the air. You don't feel the heat that you're supposed to feel. You get to the boiler room, doors closed, you hear nothing. You open the door, you don't feel heat blowing at you. It's actually rather cool in there. The most you might hear is the sound of a pump running. You know something is wrong. And what I'm saying is, as advanced as these computer systems are, when something goes wrong with that boiler plant, big massive boilers that runs itself, yeah, they run themselves, but somebody has to go in there and oversee that operation day to day. And if something goes wrong, these things shut down and they don't put themselves back online. You have to go in there and physically figure out what the hell happened and why this thing went down. Whether it was due to low water, whether it was a situation where the flame didn't ignite in 4 seconds, or a multitude of different things. Now, the computer system can give you a general perspective, even when it comes down to diagnosing. Some of these computer systems can diagnose where the problem took place at, but they can't necessarily pinpoint what the problem is, as advanced as this thing is. Because a physical human being has to walk in there and troubleshoot to figure out what the hell happened with that system and why this boiler went down. It's not going to get itself back online. It's not going to automatically reset itself. You need to get in there and find out what the hell happened. That's the way that works. So when it comes down to AI, a lot of y'all are being distracted. You're being confused. This is what they want you to believe, is that there's going to be this apocalypse of cybernetic organisms taking over humanity. That's just not the way that works. When it comes down to trucks that can drive themselves, yes, they have trucks that can drive themselves, and you might one day see them operate in isolated territory. Meaning there's not much other traffic around there that can go where things can actually go wrong. You will never, you have trucks and you have buses that can drive themselves, and I use that for a reason, the buses, because I've seen the videos on this. And there's a reason why nobody has ever seen this thing on the road by itself. And even when I was looking at the videos that I can only find on that particular channel, still, those buses were manned by a person. Because if something goes wrong, we need to have a physical person there that can man this vehicle and get control over the damn vehicle. You have Tesla cars that can drive themselves. All right? For those of you who might actually have one, go ahead and actually drive one, or get in the car and drive this guy. Let it drive itself. Get behind the wheel. Let it drive itself. Now, don't have tinted windows. Have regular windows now. Set it a destination in the GPS. Let it drive itself. Recline your seats and go and take a nap and let the car do all the work. 10 times out of 10, you're going to wake up or be awoken by police officers pulling your ass over. And I've seen a video for this, where this actually has happened. Because despite the fact that the car can drive itself, the cops are going to tell you, we don't care. So why were you sleeping behind the wheel? Well, the car can drive itself. No, you're under the influence. They're going to just put, that's what they're going to classify it as, under the influence of being tired. So we're going to have to pull your ass over, and they might even impound your damn car. We need you to go ahead and take a medical exam to confirm that you're fit to driving this vehicle. But wait a second, why am I going through all of this, officer? The car can drive itself. What they're going to tell you is, we don't care that the car can drive itself. You have to actually be awake. You can't be sleeping or paying attention, doing something else in the background and not watching what's going on the goddamn road. Why? Because if anything goes wrong, you need to be able to get control over this damn vehicle. So when you find situations like this, that becomes a liability. They're not going to sit back and watch you do these things. And I guarantee you, even when it comes down to these cars that can drive themselves, you can buy the car. You can set it to drive itself. Don't be surprised if you have to click accept to terms and conditions each and every time before you set that car to drive itself. It would not surprise me if that were the case. As a matter of fact, I don't know this for a fact, but I'm willing to go on a limb and place a bet on this. I guarantee you, if you try to set a destination for that car, right? Let it drive itself, or before it even drives itself, you know what, fine, I'm going to go ahead and sit in the back seat. Nobody's going to even be in the front seat. That car ain't going to go nowhere. Why? Because it's unmanned. There's nobody here to take control of the wheels. So even though it can drive itself, They still put parameters and provisions in there to make sure that there's always somebody there paying attention. And it would not surprise me if they set it up to where you can't even go to sleep while this car is driving itself. You still have to be awake. You have to touch the wheel every so often. You have to hit an alerter every so often. It would not surprise me if that's what's in these cars. Now, this is with a car. Police will pull you over in a standard 4-door sedan, sleeping behind the wheel and the damn thing is driving itself. I've seen the videos for this. Can you imagine a truck, a bus? Yeah, they can drive themselves. Hell, they even got trains in New York City that can operate themselves. As a matter of fact, on the L line, the L train line, you go ahead and ride one of those newer trains, the train operates itself, but there is still a person sitting behind the controls of that machine. Why? You don't have to touch anything while it's running itself. You need to make sure that this thing is operating in the compliance of safety, because if something goes wrong, you have to regain control over this machinery. It cannot run itself. You have to be there. So now, they would have an easier chance of doing this with a train. They can do this with a train when it comes down to passenger trains, whether it be inner city subway lines or commuter rails. They can do this. Why? Because this is controlled territory. It's designated territory. They would have a better shot at doing this with airplanes and boats. Why? Because this is designated territory. There's nothing else in the sky but planes. And they have to coordinate with each other on how they're going to go about moving. As long as they got that coordination, they can have a plane fly itself. They don't need to have somebody behind the controls of this plane. Likewise with a train. But they still have this. And let me just give you an example when it comes down to the rules on the road compared to a train. Like I said, I've worked in many different fields. All right? I've known locomotive engineers operating their trains accidentally killed people because somebody wanted to jump on the track, or someone was on the track that shouldn't have been there. Now, you can be moving or blowing through a grade crossing where cars have to cross over the tracks. You could be blowing through that grade crossing at full speed, 80, 90 miles an hour. What you're required to do is go through your horn sequence, the grade crossing horn sequence, and have all of your safety devices active, whether it be a bell, whether it be headlights and ditch lights. All of that stuff has to be on. If somebody just so happens to be on that track, let's say a car gets stuck on that track and you were doing everything you were supposed to do, the only thing you're required to do after that is throw the train into emergency. We know it's not going to stop, and if unfortunately nobody can get out that car and you end up striking that car and killing everyone in there, you know what happens at that point in time. I'll give you another example. A train. Have you ever looked or waited for a train, and there's a combination of local trains and express trains going by? Some of these express trains, as a matter of fact, I've been on some of them that are not operating on an express track, but operating on a track that is adjacent to the platform, to the train station. And this train is blowing through the platform at 90 miles an hour. They're allowed to do this. The only thing they're required to do before they approach that station is sound the horn. If somebody just so happens to be on that track and gets struck by that train, do you think the engineer gets in trouble for that? I'll give you another example. My experiences in the railroad. I talked to somebody who was in connection with people in the Long Island Railroad. Okay? Somebody that I worked with. Someone who actually trained me on how to operate trains, set them up, do all the stuff with them, hook up locomotives, hose them together, all that good stuff. And he told me a story about how there was some kid on a 2-track territory on the Long Island Railroad, and he's playing chicken with the eastbound train. Train is coming, and he's looking at that train on the track playing chicken with the train. The train approaches, and they're moving at, I think, 70 miles an hour. He jumps from one track to the other. Now, however, he did not see the westbound train coming. Gets struck by the westbound train, gets killed, and ricochets off of both trains. He's literally playing ping pong, his body parts flying everywhere. It's a gruesome scene. Once the engineers bring both trains to a stop, both of them are arguing with each other. And what are they arguing about? Are they arguing, oh my God, this is so traumatic. I can't believe what just happened. This is terrible. I'm so traumatized behind this. No, what they're arguing over is who struck this individual. Not far as, no, it was you that hit him. No, it was you. No, each of them are sitting back saying, no, my train is the one that hit him. They're defending that talking point that I was the one that hit him first. Why? Now, I asked you a question a second ago. Do you think the engineers get in trouble? No. There's a reason why they were asking that question, because the moment you strike somebody with a train, they're going to bring you in for counseling, for a statement. Well, the first thing they're going to bring you in for a statement. They're going to take your statement and testimony down. Then they're going to review the black box, the data recording system, the cameras. Then they're going to see what happened on that, and they're going to verify, okay, you was doing everything that you were supposed to have done. You struck him. All right. Do you need counseling? And how much time do you need off with pay? This is what happens with a train. Even if you are blowing through a train station where passengers are on that platform moving at 90 miles an hour or maximum authorized speed. If it's 100 miles an hour, they want you to be doing that as well. They don't give a damn that you're going right adjacent to the platform. And what I'm saying is you can strike somebody with a train moving at 90 miles an hour or faster, depending on what the track speed is. You hit that person, you're not at fault. Because that person shouldn't have been there. Why? Because this is designated territory. You're not supposed to be there. As a matter of fact, you get caught walking along the side of railroad tracks, they can lock you up if they choose to. Why? Because you're not supposed to be there. Now, these are with manned trains. And even though they have trains that can operate themselves, they still won't even take that risk. You strike somebody with a bus or a truck, okay, doing 5 miles an hour. The company that you work for is going to try to find any reason they can to blame you. What did you do? What could you have done differently? Despite the fact that, okay, this person, you might have had the right of way. The light was green. You started proceeding. The person jumped in front of your bus, and maybe you just knocked them down. You didn't kill nobody. The person didn't die. Maybe they didn't even get knocked down. But they're going to find every reason they can to blame you. Why? They're going to say, you're the professional. You're the one who's had training. You're the one who we train every so often to know what you're doing. You should have seen this. This is what they're going to tell you. The type of bullshit talking points that are going to come out of their mouth. And that's moving at 5 miles an hour. They can blame you. Now, a train going at 90 or 100 miles an hour and strike somebody, they don't get blamed. They get paid time off for vacation or whatever, paid counseling and paid time off if they so need it. They shit. The 2 engineers that were fighting over that, I guarantee you they were trying to book their next trip when they struck that dude playing chicken with the east and westbound train. Like I said, with a bus, a truck, you hit somebody 5 miles an hour, you don't kill nobody, they don't get hurt, but they're looking for a reason to blame you. The point that I'm trying to make when it comes down to AI, yes, they have equipment that can drive itself. They can do this with anything. But the equipment that can drive itself, imagine operating a truck in a dense city like New York. Can you imagine taking this truck through Times Square, unmanned, a truck carrying hazardous materials? Can you imagine that? If something were to go wrong, who gets blamed for that? You had an unmanned truck traveling in heavily dense populations, unmanned, carrying hazardous materials. If something happens, who's held accountable to this? Who do we come after? Because now you have nobody to blame for this. You can't blame it on the man who was driving the truck. Oh, that's right. There was nobody driving the truck. Who authorized this unmanned vehicle that runs off of AI to go out here and go into a heavily populated, dense area by itself, carrying hazardous materials? These are all of the liabilities that fall at risk behind having something like this drive itself. Can you imagine an unmanned bus operating itself? Hold on, let me let this thing pass by. Okay, as I was saying, can you imagine being in Times Square and seeing an unmanned MTA bus loaded with passengers during rush hour driving through that city? Could you imagine that? And then, like I said, what happens if something goes wrong? And not only if you hit somebody outside, what if the bus gets into a severe accident and people inside the bus get injured or killed? See, here's the problem with this. If they ever were to try this, It would either take a handful of small accidents or one major catastrophe to go wrong, and they will pull the plug on this immediately. This is why AI is not coming to take over your jobs doing mechanical work, truck driving work. It's not happening. First of all, these things can't even, listen, you can do this on the railroad. You can do this with, you can't do it with freight trains because that takes a 2 to 3 man operation, especially when you're cutting cars, building trains, storing cars. That's a whole other dynamic. You can't do that with AI. But passenger trains, commuter trains, you can do this with. Why? Because you have a train that's already assembled. All you need to do is get it to run from one destination to another. And these are in controlled environments. Tell me, when was the last time you looked at a passenger train moving on the main line and going from one track to another where the engineer had to stop the train and the conductor has to get out, or the engineer gets out to go ahead and line switches? They don't do that. Why? Because this is controlled territory. You got dispatchers that do this. You got switches that automatically line themselves. So all you have to do is just comply with speed restrictions. I know this based off of experience, working with people who are in that field. This doesn't happen. So yeah, you can get AI to operate a train much easier because it is isolated, designated territory. The train is the only thing that is supposed to be on those tracks. That's why if you just so happen to get struck by a train, even if you're standing at the platform and you fall into the track, it is not the engineer's fault because you had no business being down there in the first place. Even if you drop something in that track, they're going to tell you don't go in there and get anything. You contact an official and let somebody go in there and get it for you. But you don't take your ass and go walking in that track for any damn reason. Why? Because you have no business being there. If something happens to you, you never had no business being there in the first place. But now a truck operates in dense areas. A bus, a car, this operates in heavily populated areas where everybody is entitled to that space. The street does not solely belong to the vehicles. Pedestrians, you got cyclists, you have other motorists. All of these elements that take place that are unpredictable because you have each person that you see that is a personality that you don't know what they're getting ready to do. And you have to, a good driver, start to anticipate what can potentially go wrong. AI is not going to do this. AI is not that advanced. And if, like I said, if something were to happen, because mistakes will happen, who gets blamed for that? AI is not going to think quick when somebody decides to cut off your damn truck out of nowhere, and then you got to either brake hard or cut to the right or left in order to avoid from hitting them. AI is not doing that. AI is going to go blank, it's going to pause up, or it's going to just shut down. This is what they're programmed to do. This is what machinery is programmed to do. So when people are sitting here telling you, well, AI is going to be taking over everything, no, these are low-skilled jobs. Like I said, AI assembles cars, but it doesn't repair them. Because why? It takes a different skill set. It takes no skill set to have an assembly line putting together machinery. And yet, and still, even those assembly lines, you still got people overseeing this. So when we sit back and talk about AI is going to do this and that, no, I want y'all to really pay attention. That's a mere distraction. AI is not that sophisticated. They want you to believe that there's going to be some Skynet type computer system, some super advanced computer system that learned how to think on its own and is going to come after humanity and decide to exterminate humanity. No. There are people behind that. That is just a mere distraction. One other thing I want to mention that I forgot to bring up, even when it comes down to the stupid people, you think about the playing a game of chess. The pieces on a chessboard. You have the pawns that are in the first row, and then in the back row behind them, immediately behind them, you have your most valuable pieces, and the most two that are valuable on that chessboard are the king and queen. The pawns are expendable. The pawn, your job is to go out there. If you can take some lives, good. If you can take some pieces, good. But you're there to sacrifice yourself. That's your main purpose. If something goes wrong and we lose a valuable piece, you need to get to the end of that chessboard and you sacrifice yourself in exchange for that piece. We lose a queen, a rook, a bishop, a knight. Guess what? You got to get to the end and go ahead and exchange yourself, sacrifice yourself in order to get us that valuable piece back, because that's what's going to help us win the game. All of the stupid people that you see, they are essentially pawns in this game of chess. And the most valuable pieces that you see in the back, those are your elites. Think about it. This all makes sense when you really think about it. And when shit hits the fan, the zombies and the stupid people that you see that are co-signing nonsense right now, this is going to be who you have to get through before you can even deal with the elites. Because like I told you, they know they don't actually have the numbers to do what they want to do. So they have to try to coerce and get as many stupid people on board with them as they possibly can. Because if something goes wrong, okay, we got several buffer classes that are going to protect us. I want you to think about that. This is another reason why they're trying to distract people. A couple of years ago, talk about some SpaceX program and we're going into outer space. No, I don't believe that. We're going to colonize Mars. No, you don't have the technology to do that or the resources. But this is what they want you to believe. They're not going anywhere. They're going into these underground bunkers. That's where they're going. So mind you, they'll have you throw a damn doggy bone out there to have you chasing, oh, this is where they're at. We got to go to Mars. No, they're not there. They're not at Mars. They'll have you believing that, distracting you. Just like with this AI. They'll have you believing that it's some advanced cybernetic organism like Skynet going to have these Terminator machines running around that look like humans, selecting us for extermination. That's not what that is. What was it? And see, they were talking about this on Fox News a couple of years ago. I think Laura Ingraham stated how they had two AI computers that were communicating with each other and were learning and developing and decided, hey, we need to exterminate humanity because humanity is not good for our existence. So we got to find a way to wipe them out. And I'm just questioning who was gullible enough or stupid enough to believe in that bullshit. That some AI bots decided that humanity needs to be exterminated. Let me tell you something right now. This is what they want you to believe. This is a man-made agenda. That's what it really is. A bot, a computer, AI does not do anything beyond what it was programmed to do. It is equivalent. Let me just take the boiler for an example. The boiler could bring up water to a boiling point. The temperature to boil water is 212 degrees. If you produce steam and you pressurize it, typically your average low pressure boiler runs at about 5 to 7 psi. So you might get around 220, 225 degrees Fahrenheit. I haven't done the calculations to see exactly how hot those temperatures are. I would have to do something like that down the line, but not now. So now, do you think for 1 second that you can use the substance that boiler is producing to now heat up water, or to use the water or the steam that the boiler is making that is boiled up at a temperature no greater than 225 degrees Fahrenheit? Do you think you can now use that same temperature to now heat up water to 300 degrees, 312 degrees, 350 degrees, all coming from 225 degrees Fahrenheit? No, that is impossible. Why? Because you are not going to produce more than what that boiler is already producing with its own resources. It's just not happening. And it's the same analogy that I'm using when it comes down to AI. AI is not going to exceed human beings when it comes down to intelligence. Now, an AI bot might be more intelligent than the average person. Why? Because they can cram all of this information into its hard drive that you don't have into your hard drive. But as far as it being more intelligent than people in general, no, it's not happening. It might be able to do certain calculations faster than you can. A calculator can compute numbers faster than the average person can, because that's what it was programmed to do. Every sequence it has been built into it. But if you try to do something of a sequence that it doesn't have, and you see the symbols for it that indicate, okay, it's going to use multiplication, division, subtraction, addition. You try to come up with a different formula that it doesn't know. It won't comprehend that. It won't process it. It doesn't understand it. It can't compute it. But if it was supposed to be that advanced, it should be able to figure out the formula for it and come up with a sequence on how to do this. But it can't. Why? Because it can only do what it was programmed to do by mankind. It is just that simple. What I'm telling you is the AI is a mere distraction. And if you were to ever see some cybernetic organism walking around in your city with a gun or something else, you best believe There are people overseeing that, making sure that it does what it is programmed to do, and that if anything goes wrong, they can immediately get that machine out of Dodge. Why? Because that becomes a liability to them. Because if that machine gets captured by the citizens who live in that area, then we can now figure out where the sources of this machine and where its origins and where it comes from and who's controlling it. Which is something they don't want you to do or want you to know. Why? Because they want you to believe that some advanced computer system is just going to be out to get you. No. Everything that you see taking place that a machine does, if it operates on its own, it was programmed to do so by men. And it is not going to do anything that it was not programmed to do. And even when it comes down to AI going out and fixing things, these things break down. So who repairs these AI machines when they break down? A lot of y'all are under the impression they're going to take over every job. It's not happening. I'm telling you that right now. Now, let me just bring it back to the automated trucks and buses. That's what they call them for those that actually operate themselves. They have them. And the only way they will successfully be able to get them to operate in dense cities on their own is by getting every person that they can out of a car. That means you only take buses and trains. That means the road is operated by vehicles that are automatically controlled, that drive themselves. Which means, guess what? You don't have a car. Because if you have the average citizen on a car with automated vehicles, the average citizen is unpredictable. They can do anything on the goddamn road. This thing is not going to be able to anticipate the unpredictability of people. It's only going to do what it was programmed to do. And anything outside of that programming, it's not going to be able to compute that. Now, if you have nothing but a bunch of automated vehicles on the road driving themselves, trucks, buses, and cars, they all communicate with each other. So if you have a truck driving behind a car and they're both automated, they're already communicating with each other. There's a certain amount of distance that's already set. So the truck is not going to go any closer than that distance. So if that car decides to turn right or left, guess what? It's already communicating with the next vehicle before it even does so. So preparations are already being made so that car can safely make that turn by every other vehicle. So compliance is already given. And the reason why, even when it comes down to cruise control, they have these settings on cars now to where adaptive cruise control, it will only keep a certain distance behind the car. And you can set it to where it does this. Now, with automated vehicles, it'll have something like that. It'll automatically keep a predetermined distance between the next vehicle. Why? Because if it drives closer and something goes wrong, it's not going to be able to anticipate that. How many times do you see people driving, tailgating the next person, and if something goes wrong, you can swiftly move out of the way or make a lane change or even stop your car? Enough to the point where nothing happens. You can do that because your mind is that advanced. Because you can learn new things that take place that you might have not have been prepared for. And then you start adapting and changing your driving pattern based off of that. That's what makes a good driver. Hell, I don't tailgate, but if I wanted to ride directly behind somebody, I can do so and anticipate what's getting ready to happen. And even if something unpredictable happens, I can go, I know how to counteract it before it even happens. Many of you can do this who drive. AI is not going to be able to do this. The only way this can happen is if they can get the majority of people, if not all people, out of vehicles and everything drives itself automatically. That way anything anything in close range of each other automatically has a communication between each other through some central system on what's getting ready to happen next. This is the only way that'll work. The reason why they can do this with trains, because trains are in controlled territory, automatically controlled territory, where the signals communicate with the train. Even to the point where it's so advanced now to where if the engineer is not complying with the speed restriction, the train will automatically put it into a penalty and either come to a slowdown or to a complete stop. But still, there's an engineer behind that throttle running that train. So I want y'all to think about that for a second. Now, this is kind of long-winded, kind of long drawn out, but I want to reference the last portion with the LGBT, particularly transgenders. And what I want y'all to notice is you got to start learning how to recognize patterns. Look at consistencies. all of the stuff that I've mentioned, this is what your governments want to implement. This is what they want to regulate. They want to have complete control. This is why they're talking about 15-minute cities, which that will never work unless they can get compliance from the people. This is the only way this will work. If they can get people stupid enough to go out and buy electric cars, then they can start controlling shit. But if they can't get people to comply, they'll never be able to implement what it is that they ultimately want. The way they can do this is by compliance. This is what ultimately determines whether they can pull off what they want to pull off or not. In the transgender community, and this is why I want to reference this, and when we talk about downloading somebody's consciousness and so forth and so on, what I'm saying is I should be able to see a consistent pattern of highly advanced intelligence beyond my wildest imaginations. And I'm telling you, I don't see that. I see blatant incompetence. You can not only find this in the work field, but you can see this in politicians. You can see this amongst the whole pandemic. I mean, this is blatant incompetence, what we've been seeing. Like I said, the fact that we got a bumbling idiot sitting in the White House right now with a cackling hyena like Kamala Harris as vice president. I mean, that right there just only furthermore solidifies that you're dealing with incompetence beyond your wildest imagination. I don't see intelligence. And when we talk about AI and all this other stuff to be able to do the things that y'all are saying that it's going to do, you should see a highly advanced intelligence that really indicate this. And I'm seeing nothing but a bunch of disorganization. This is the most disorganized shit I've ever seen in my life. And if that's the case, you then can't tell me that you have the technology to build some AI robot that is more sophisticated than human being, to the point where they don't even need us. No, that's just not the way that works. So now that we've established all of these patterns that I've referenced, all of these different industries that show just a complete mess, we talk about the transgenders. And then you think about for 1 second downloading your consciousness into a hard drive and storing it and downloading your soul or whatever people want to think this is. And I'm telling you, they don't have the technology to do this. And the reason why I'm referencing the transgenders is to go ahead and make an even bigger point related to all of this. When you listen to the government, they're pushing, we know that Democrats have been pushing for transgenders. They're trying to tell people you have to affirm your kids. They can identify as what they want and you have to affirm that. They're trying to pass laws to now literally take your kids away if you don't conform to their saying what they identify as. You have to announce people by their pronouns, address people by their pronouns. This is what they're telling people. Things that literally make no fucking sense. This is what they're telling you. So this is all that you know that this is all tied in. The fact that you have Democrats pushing for this so hard. They're all about homosexuality. They're all about all this transgender stuff. You have to ask yourself at the end of the day, what is the benefit in it? I mean, listen, we can just skip what's all the disadvantages behind this. Tell me what is the benefit in a man running around, identifying himself as a woman, putting on a dress, and thinking that he's a woman. Tell me what is the benefit in a woman identifying herself as a man and trying to conduct herself like a man, trying to physically transform themselves into the opposite sex. Tell me what is the benefit behind this. I don't have to get into all of the disadvantages because it's already being spoken about on social media and in certain cases mainstream media. Tell me what the advantages are and they won't be able to give you an answer. And I say that for a bigger reason because if you look at the way they present this whole agenda of transgenders and whatnot, they try to perpetuate it as if it's this great lifestyle. It's so wonderful. You'll be so happy. You'll find the happiness, the long lost happiness that you've never been able to find. And I'm telling you, that's just not what that is. And now the reason why I'm saying this is because at some point, art should imitate life. And that's not what I'm seeing. Many of y'all remember back in 2013, late 2013, you seen me in my first video of me pushing a vehicle. So I've been on the road for 10 years now. A little over 10 years now I've been on the road. And I would find myself just driving around, just enjoying the car, just really just bonding with the vehicle. And I remember one night, I got finished coming back from a friend's house. And I'm driving home and I'm stuck at a red light. And I'm waiting at the red light and I'm seeing somebody approach my vehicle. And as I look up, I'm looking at somebody who's about 6'4", with long blonde weave on, and a onesie. I'm thinking to myself, what the hell is going on that you're randomly approaching my vehicle? And why the hell do you have this on? And clearly this is a man. What the hell are you out here doing? What the fuck is this? And then it started to dawn on me, okay, you're a sex worker. You're out here prostituting yourself. Now, I've been all up and down New York City, and I've seen this in multiple different locations. Times when I'm going to work, and listen, y'all see me in videos bright and early in the morning. The sun ain't even come out yet. It's not even 4 o'clock yet, and I'm on the way to work. As a matter of fact, one of y'all stated this about 5 years ago. Man, this poor brother's, there's not even sunlight outside. This poor brother's on his way to work. Yeah. Because I'm hustling. So y'all know I'm out all different random hours. And I've seen some strange shit. And I've seen a consistent pattern of transgenders being out here prostituting. To the point where, you know, this is one of the reasons why I'm even like keeping my windows rolled down, because you don't know who the hell's going to approach your vehicle. And I had one approach my vehicle. Unfortunately, I had the windows down at the time. And I said, what the I asked him, I said, hold on a second. I said, you're a man. Yeah. He said, so I said, well, why the hell are you out here doing this shit? And the dude says, I love my life. Now, this can take place in the Bronx. It can take place in Westchester County. It can take place in Manhattan. This can take place in Queens. This can even take place in Brooklyn. And you'll find this shit. Now, maybe I didn't see this because I wasn't driving before, so I wasn't all over the goddamn place. But once I became mobile, I'm seeing this shit all over the fucking place. And it would not surprise me if this goes on all over the United States. So when I sit back and I see Democrats pushing the trans community as if this is such a wonderful thing, and I'm sitting back saying, okay, well, the majority of them that I see are out here as sex workers. Literally walking up to people in their vehicles. In certain areas, you don't even want to be there after certain hours because you're just going to see them all over the goddamn place. Aggressively approaching you. You could be in your company car. They're aggressively approaching you. What the fuck? Are you serious? So my thing is, what I'm saying is at some point, art is not imitating life. Because if you're showcasing a handful of them on social media, mainstream media, like Dylan Mulvaney, and then I see what's really going on outside of social media in the real world, and they're not living like that, I'm saying to myself, what the hell is going on here? Why would anybody push this agenda? Now, listen, I could get into multiple reasons as of why, and I might do that in another video, but not right now. As far as why they're in the condition that they're in. Well, you know what? I very well might briefly touch base on that. I might. It depends on how I feel. This is long-winded, but hey, it is what it is. But when I see them sit back pushing the whole trans community and how they're so happy and whatnot, and clearly when that dude walked up to my vehicle and I asked him, you're a man, so why the hell are you out here doing this? And he says he loves his life. There's nothing that indicates, just your whole look in your face showcases that you're not happy. You're standing out here in the middle of the night in the freezing cold, walking up to strangers' vehicles, hoping that you can make some money, trying to sell sex. So clearly you're not happy, because if you loved your life, you wouldn't be out here doing this. Unless you had no other choice but to. And that still is not an indication that you love your life. So then if liberals are pushing people like Dylan Mulvaney, Bud Light put him on a damn beer can, and we've seen the backlash that took place behind that. And then if you were to actually type in transgenders and see some of the stories that they're coming out and saying after going through with these surgeries, the horror stories that they go through, the constant medical problems that they go through. One came online and stated that he is now a medical cash cow after doing what he did because he has constant problems and he has to go back to the doctor to get revision surgeries or just take certain medications. This is the stuff that you go through. So I'm sitting back and I'm looking and I ask the question once again, show me where is the benefit? Because I can point out where there literally is no benefit. And as a matter of fact, you're really doing yourself a disservice. You're harming yourself by doing it. But once again, I don't have to go into all that. Because if you look it up, they're telling you themselves on how horrible their lives are. So tell me, where is the benefit? And if you ask this to a liberal, anybody who's pushing this agenda, they can't give you not one answer. But they'll tell you, hey, if your child feels that your son wants to be a girl, you need to affirm that. Hey, you can identify as a transgender, and hey, would you like to go through with taking hormones? You know, if you could just get rid of that pesky penis of yours, you'll feel so feminine and so much like a woman. It'll be the happiest thing you've ever gone through with. This is the stuff that they tell people. And you got to wonder what kind of sick, demonic, twisted, evil individuals would push some shit like this. Why would they do this? And then when you sit back and start to wonder, the transgenders, they have the highest suicide rate. They literally have no stats that they can point to that says that this is a good idea. They have the highest depression rate. In many cases, they are alienated out of certain spaces, in many spaces in society. So what you are literally doing is quarantining yourself and relegating yourself to a very small dynamic. The question will then once again have to be, why would anybody push this? I mean, I sat down one time and looked at how one of these surgeries are done. The bottom surgery where the man has his penis inverted into a vagina. This is traumatizing. This is outright disgusting. They're literally burning and cauterizing parts, cutting shit open. It's disgusting. You would have to ask the question, what human being would do this to themselves? They literally, I mean, just to describe what they do in order to make a pouch, because that's really what it is. They have to drill a hole into your pelvic area because you as a man you're not built like a woman. So you don't have the space available to try to replicate a vagina. It is horrific. It is traumatizing. And you would have to ask the question, what human being would do this to themselves, would self-castrate themselves like this? Who would do this? And why would anybody ever push for this to be done? You have to be an evil human being. I can't even classify you as a human being to try to encourage somebody to go down this path. Because just what I'm describing to you, can you point out where there is a benefit in it for you? For anybody who would be crazy enough to do this. Then it starts to make sense on why you can see the transgenders on social media telling you how they've ruined their lives. Famous, popular transgenders who are telling you this now have constant depression issues, emotional issues. One is online and stated the only way that I feel like I can ever be free is to be euthanized. This is what the transgender said. I'm not making this up. I didn't go ahead and say this. I'm not implying anything about this. I'm just stating what that individual said. So when you sit back and you listen to their stories and you realize that, okay, this is a horror story. This is a nightmare. You then start to see how this can all unfold and how they can end up in this trance of having emotional thought, having depression. And you think about it. First of all, you were manipulated. On certain cases, you might have had people on your side telling you, don't go through with this. If you want to be a gay man, just live your life as a feminine gay man. If you want to be a butch woman, just live your life as a butch lesbian woman. If you want to be bisexual, just live your life as a bisexual. But don't go through with this agenda. And in many cases, these people probably have people telling them don't do this, but they don't want to listen to them because they'll look at you as you're the one that's crazy. You're not supporting my dreams, so forth and so on. You're just a hater, just saying every cruel, fucked up thing imaginable that they can say to you because they disagree with what you're saying, instead of taking the time to actually listen to what you are saying to them. And instead what they're doing is they're going ahead and listen and aligning themselves with people who don't have their best interest in heart, people who can care less about them, people who know that they're on a sinking ship and want to gain as many people as they can to be on that demise with them. So then you let these people convince you into taking hormone therapy. That's the first transition to where you can permanently damage your body, by taking hormones. And it's not me saying this, the transgenders have come out and have confirmed this. Then after you done taken the hormone therapy, you notice you still don't feel any better. So now you got these creeps, these demonic, evil, wicked people telling you if you can just get rid of that pesky penis of yours, you will feel all so feminine, and that will bring you the happiness that you so-called desire. Even though there's no studies that have shown this, none. And in certain cases, they're pressuring you. Hey, you want to go down the path of being a transgender? Hey, we'll back you, we'll financially support you, we'll help you, we'll take care of everything that you need. And then they're going to start pressuring you once you start taking the hormone treatment. Hey, do you want to take the surgery? In order for us to continue funding and financing you, you're going to have to take the bottom surgery, the gender reassignment surgery. This is what they have stated. So once again, I don't need YouTube coming at me telling me, well, this is misinformation, we're going to have to flag the video down. I'm not the one saying this. I'm merely reciting what I have already heard. And I want y'all to stick with me for a second, because this is going to go right back into AI and downloading your consciousness and so forth and so on. So now they allow themselves to get caught up into this situation where they say, okay, either by peer pressure or either by wanting to believe that this is actually true, even though deep down inside of the back of their mind, they know this can never be true. But you're not going to listen to your instinct now. You're not going to listen to the ones that are really on your side telling you don't do this. You're going to align yourself with the people who are sick, demonic, evil, twisted, nothing but complete deviants and degenerates. And you get on board with them. Then you decide, okay, let's set a date to go under the knife. And you set that date. Morning comes in, you get up and have your coffee, whatever the case may be, eat your breakfast, and you go to the hospital and you go under anesthesia. And by the time you wake up, the surgery was already performed. And when you wake up and look at it, you already know, holy shit, what the fuck did I just do to myself? Deep down inside, they know this. But you don't want to believe it yet. So you convince yourself, oh no, it's just fresh surgery. So I got to give myself some time to recover and heal, and everything will go back to normal. Things are going to get better. That's what they tell themselves. They'll sell themselves a lie. Then as enough time goes by, they realize you're not feeling any better. After you've had to go back multiple times for revision surgeries, you realize this ain't getting any better. After you realize in many cases you're peeing out of the catheter because you done damaged your body to the point where, what is it? I can't think of the name of the tube, but they damage themselves to a point where it's beyond repair. And now you realize you got to take all kinds of antidepressants, all kinds of painkillers, every medication under the sun you're taking. Then you realize, oh, you got to dilate. This is the next thing they've been talking about for a year to 2 years. What? Are you serious? Do you know what that is when they talk about dilating? It's when you stick an object like a dildo inside of yourself and keep it in there to keep the damn womb, to keep the hole that they've opened inside of you, which is not supposed to be there. Your body does not recognize it as a vagina. So your body does what it naturally is supposed to do, which is try to close up that damn womb, that hole. So you got to keep something in there in order for that not to happen. Your sex life, forget about it. You ain't never going to benefit from your sex life. If you are having a sex life, you only exist to satisfy the person that you're with, because you ain't getting no pleasure out of it unless you like taking it up the rear end. That's whatever they choose to do. That's which, you know what? Okay. All right. The point that I'm saying after all this is you're not going to have the same sex life. Your main purpose, if you have a sex life, is going to be to pleasure somebody else. This is the reality behind getting involved with this. You're not going to go back to what you once had. And at some point, the reality resonates in their brain and they realize this ain't going to get any better. And they realize there's no coming back from what you did. You can't get your penis back, which many of them, well, they all say, I wish I could go back and undo that. And listen, when you're going through a state of depression, when you're going through a hard time in your life, your mind, when you fall asleep, will attempt to take you back to a place that it remembers that's familiar. Whether it been when things were good and everything was all right, you had nothing to worry about, your mind will bring you back to that place. And at that moment, it feels so real. It feels surreal, like, oh, this is just wonderful. It's as if none of the hardship that you were going through at that time even existed. But somewhere along the back of your mind, you know that this is only a dream. And you're just hoping that you'll be proven wrong. And then you wake up. And whatever hard situations you were dealing with, you realize are still there. And you better find a way to overcome this. Because this can become a serious problem. Now imagine for the transgenders. You've gone through with the surgery. You've come to the harsh reality that this is not going away. You can never undo what you just did. You can never go back to the damn surgery people and have them undo what they did to your penis. Your penis is never coming back to the point where you even got one that says, I wish I still had my penis. I mean, it is what it is. So now as you're dealing with this depression, when you fall asleep, your mind is taking you back to before you even went through that surgery, before you even went and started taking hormone treatment, and you feel happy, but only in your mind, in your sleep. You look down, your penis is there. It's like what you just did never even occurred. Your penis is, you can use it the same way you once did before you went through the surgeries. Oh yeah, it takes you to a happy place. And it feels so surreal. And then at some point, even though despite the fact that you know that this is a dream deep down in the back of your mind, and you hope that you never wake up, at some point you actually wake up. And then you look at yourself and realize everything that I did to myself still is in existence. You look down and maybe this wasn't a dream, and no, your penis is not there. And you got nobody to blame for this but yourself. Because despite the fact that you had people there warning you, telling you don't go through with this. This is not the way to go down. You can live your life as a gay man, a lesbian woman, or a bisexual and not have to go through with any of this, and it's perfectly fine. Instead of you listening to that advice and you realize that now that these were the people who were actually trying to help you, you went ahead and done the unthinkable to yourself, and what you've done was turn your body into a permanent prison to where you can never undo what you've done. Then it starts to become understandable as of why they have the highest suicide rate. And then when you look at the lifestyle that they have to live, how they are out here being sex workers because they are ostracized out of other areas in society because by and large they are not accepted. This is just what it is. Then it starts to become understandable that, wait a second, this was anything but a success story. Now some of y'all might ask me, well, what the hell does transgenders and what everything that you just described have to do with AI and downloading your consciousness? Well, I'm glad you asked that question. I take you down this long-winded, long drawn-out story for a specific reason. Because the bottom line is this. When it comes down to downloading somebody's consciousness, this is not something that you can do with a hard drive. You can't do this through Wi-Fi. You can't do this through a cell phone connection. You can't do this through Bluetooth. You can't do this through beaming your consciousness into some... No, it doesn't work that way. You can't store it in a micro SD card. You can't do that. Some of y'all might say, well, but they can see what your thoughts are by looking at brainwaves. It can give them a general estimate of your emotional state. That's what that does. They don't know the intrinsic details of what you're thinking. And what I'm telling you is they don't have this technology. And the reason why I'm saying is to download a consciousness, a soul. Literally, you put it by saying you could download somebody's soul. Which, if you believe that they can actually do this, I got a bridge in Brooklyn. I'll sell you for an even better price. But anyhow, to have this level of intelligence If they are so sophisticated and they've got this much intelligence to where they can actually pull these things off, then clearly this should resonate in other areas. And it doesn't resonate in government. It doesn't resonate when it comes down to businesses. It doesn't resonate when it comes down to your incompetent politicians, including your president and vice president. It doesn't resonate when it comes down to local industries and major industries that are funded by government. It doesn't resonate in all of these different areas. It didn't resonate itself in the pandemic, and it's not resonating itself, most importantly, when it comes down to the transgender community. What do I mean by that? All right. And by the way, everything that I just mentioned right there, it goes right back into what I've said when it comes down to pattern recognition and consistency. And the consistent thing within all of these things, the consistent thread within everything that I've mentioned, is backed by your global elites. So now let me get to the point I was getting ready to make, because I am long-winded with this, but this is probably one of the most important productions that I have made this year, maybe ever on this channel. But the bottom line is this. The reason why I reference all of that with the transgenders, I take you down that long rabbit hole, is if these people are so smart to where they can do all of this stuff and download consciousness and store it, download your soul, then clearly, when it comes down to converting a man into a woman, they should have no problem doing this. Now, once again, your consciousness, your soul, that is not something that you can physically touch. You can't connect with that through, you can't get on a bus and go and map a route to go get there. There's no way that you can actually touch this. This is spiritual stuff that you're talking about. So whatever would have the advanced technology to connect into the spiritual realm to where you can capture these things, capturing essentially spirits and storing it in some sort of feeble, meek technology made by a man, then clearly you have the intelligence to be able to convert a man into a woman. Clearly, you have physical body parts. Why can't you just make a penis into a vagina? Why can't you just take a skin graft off of a woman's arm or off of her butt cheek and turn it into a penis? See, these things don't even work. If you had the success at doing this, then clearly the transgender community should be the happiest community, and they're not. They have the highest suicide rate, the highest depression rate. And you don't have to believe me. Just go ahead and look at their damn stories. These are people who are, listen, man. Like I said, you don't got to take my word for anything. Just go ahead and look this shit up. So what I'm saying is, if they had this level of technology and they were this sophisticated, then clearly there should be countless areas that showcase that you are this advanced. And when I'm looking at, I'm seeing that you are not advanced at all. When you look at these buffoons who are pushing these ridiculous, radical, left-winging, liberal nutjob agendas, these are not intelligent people. Bill Gates didn't start Microsoft. He bought it off of somebody else or stole the idea. This is what you're dealing with, is people who got a lot of money to back up a stupid agenda that they can push now. These people don't have any intelligence. They have no creativity. This is why they steal ideas from everybody else. They have no ingenuity. And will let you know how incompetent they are. You just look at everything that takes place in local government, from what took place with the pandemic to the policies that they push. They're not even in line with what people are thinking. So how the hell would they have the level of technology to go ahead and download your consciousness onto a hard drive? Some of y'all talk about clones. I don't think they have the technology to produce a clone. Now, to make a cyborg that looks exactly like somebody else, yes. But to actually produce an exact replica, no. I'm going to go on a limb, as a matter of fact, and say that they don't have that technology. But see, the thing is, they will try to convince you of anything. They'll put up a good picture, paint a pretty story, good theatrics, and they'll have you believing it. The same way when it comes down to the moon landing. They had a whole bunch of people believing that. Oh, there's over 400,000 people involved with it. Can all these people uphold the lie? You don't have to have 400,000 people know that it's a lie. That's the thing. If you can convince them that it is real, then that carries itself. See, the one thing these people are good at is manipulation. But lately it hasn't been working because the stories and the script is piss poor. They're using the same redundant, goofy strategies, and they're too dumb and incompetent to realize that this shit doesn't work. That people are waking up, they're catching on. So they just say, oh, let's just keep doing the same thing and hopefully we're going to get somebody to go ahead and back us. No. See, the thing is, what they're pushing is anti-survival. What they're pushing is anti-life. And it all ties into what? Depopulation. Wasn't that something that Bill Gates was talking about? Oh yeah, they tried to scrub that off of YouTube many years ago. But we all have seen the clips. Now, what would the transgender community have to do with depopulation? I mean, why would they push LGBT? I guess if you have two men who have no desire to be with a woman, especially if they're chopping off body parts and mutilating themselves and vice versa with women, what's the one thing they can't do if you remove your ball sack? Oh, that's right, produce children. What does that contribute to? Oh, depopulation. Do you start to see how this all links itself together? Once again, this is what we're dealing with. These people want you to believe that they are this sophisticated, that they have all of this technology, and they don't. Is what I'm telling you. The only way they can make it more believable is if they can get the majority of people to get in line with their feeble, goofy agenda. And their agendas make no damn sense, so eventually it will implode on itself. What they are pushing for is unsustainable, so eventually it will implode on itself. This is really what we're dealing with, and I really want you to understand that's what you're up against. So when you're running around thinking that they're going to do all of this bullshit, no. They need a group of stupid people to go ahead and back their agenda and go ahead and do the dirty work for them. This is why they were trying to deputize people when the pandemic started for not wearing masks and not getting vaccinated. Let stupid people feel empowered so that way they go ahead and they do the dirty work for us. They know good and damn well they don't have the numbers. And they're mostly, this is just my projection. This is just what I believe. That if shit hits the fan and their plans don't work, they're going to go running into their underground cities, their underground bunkers. Mind you, while convincing you that they took off at some rocket ship and went to Mars where they colonized and they're not there. So you'll be focused on how to get there while they're down in underground bunkers living there. While you're busy thinking that some cybernetic organism, some Skynet computer system like the Terminator has selected you for extinction and extermination. And you're going after that. The ones who really are the ones pushing the agenda are underground, safe, far removed from you. This is just what I believe, and I believe it to be true. Nothing of what we've seen taking place thus far has made a damn bit of sense. Everything that the president has done thus far has, just from looking at it, it seems like he's literally trying to destroy the country, selling out the nation. This is what he's doing. And they're trying to convince you that you need to go out and vote for this guy again. This is one of the reasons why they were afraid of Donald Trump, because he wasn't going for this. The influx of illegals, all of these things, this is not sustainable. And see, the thing is, when it comes down to these people, these elites, these rich assholes like Bill Gates, who years ago wanted to, he was talking about blocking out the sun a couple of years ago. But some of y'all are so stupid, you don't even acknowledge that for what it is. Y'all say, oh, that's not what he wanted to do. Well, they need a goofy, stupid people who are going to sit by and co-sign this. This is what it is. You're not dealing with people who are intelligent. You're not dealing with people who know how to create any goddamn thing. And I'm going to go ahead and quote something that, what's the guy? Pastor Dowell stated when it comes down to governments. Governments don't produce anything. They only take. And when you think about what the meaning is of a government, what I know about govern, that means to watch over. You have ultimate authority. And let me go ahead and tell something to white people real fast, because this is where y'all went wrong. When you allowed an organization to form called the government to take place and rise up, that's where you went wrong. Government officials should never be doing anything without having the approval of the masses of people. It is just that simple. And when they're making decisions over millions and they're only a handful, and they're governing over millions, and they're only a handful, that's a serious problem. You went wrong just like based off of that alone. You went wrong. And this is going on all over the goddamn world. They're trying to have one world government, new world orders. We know that this is what they're doing. And they've been saying this for years. New world order. Hell, didn't they have a group in WCW, NWO? What did that stand for? New World Order? Hulk Hogan, Kevin Nash, and Razor Ramon? Oh, that's right. I forgot all about that, huh? But this is what we're dealing with. So once again, the way they can get people, or get people in line, I should say, is by fear-mongering people. Convince you that they have all of this technology. Convince you that they're going to have cybernetic organisms coming after you, governing your cities, police dogs running around, monitoring you. But best believe, anytime you see some robot, some cybernetic organism, there's going to be somebody not too far behind it. Because that machine can and will become a liability. Machines are not as agile as people. They're not as mobile as people. They cannot think the same way as people. They don't have the same abilities to learn the same way people can. You can't just take that and duplicate that and put it into some damn AI bot. It doesn't work that way. You cannot just duplicate the human body. The human body is so fucking advanced and so sophisticated, nobody can replicate this. You can have something that resembles it, but as far as replicating the same exact thing, no. There is no such technology that exists. But if they can convince people that, yeah, we can download your memories and all this. Let me also tell you something else. Excuse me. These people are real good when it comes down to theatrics, and I think this is going to be where I close the video off at. They're good when it comes down to theatrics. What I want you to pay attention to is this. What they'll do, in order to convince you that they have downloaded your consciousness, and y'all will say this basically if they can recite back some of the same things that you've done. And it'll be basic information that they recite back to you, and you'll sit back and say, oh my God, they downloaded my consciousness. No, they haven't. They have not. What they have done was they have documented what you have done, documented your lifestyle, and they do this with your phone. How many of you get an email once a month where Google showcases every place you travel to in that month? How many of you are sitting up here posting pictures of when you go to some tropical island or going to Dubai, as so many of y'all love to do? Taking pictures of what foods you ate. Literally just showcasing the whole damn world what you're doing. And then you wonder how these people can recite back the very same information to you. And you say, oh my God, they downloaded my consciousness. No, they haven't. These are just in small areas how they're doing this. In more intrinsic areas, they use your phone to track you. That's what's taking place. How many times you're talking and all of a sudden your Google on your phone just starts recording what you're saying. To the point where you have to go and look deep into your settings in order to be able to turn that shit off. I want y'all to take a good guess. Also, what you post on social media. These are just areas on how they document you. You think you're going to put something up on social media and they're not tracking what you're doing? I don't know what to tell you. But this is just what it is. This is what we're dealing with. And they already have a track log of you from the time when you're a baby. From the time you come out the womb. What do you get when you're born? You get a birth certificate. What is that? A document. A traceable document. You get a social security number, social security card, well, a number when you come out of the hospital. So they know what time, what day you were born on, the date you were born on, and the time you were born. They know the day, date, and time you left the hospital. This is all documented. They know what school you have gone to when you go to school. You have to register for all of these things. They can tell where you've lived, how many times you've moved, how long you were in school from when you went to high school, from when you graduated to high school, to whether you went into a trade school, whether you were a dropout, or whether you went to college. They can find all of these things out. All of this stuff is documented. When you go ahead and you apply for a driver license or a non-driver's ID, that's a document that they can easily trace your address. Everything is on there. And if you decide to put a different address on there, if you live someplace and you got a bill in your name, guess what? They can trace you based off of that. You got a cell phone, guess what? We can ping to see where your phone is at most of the time. Where does that phone reside at, or where does it lay at the end of the damn day? This is how they can find out what they need to know about you. So they'll put up good theatrics. And even when you go to a job, all of this stuff is on file. You get a tax return, a W-2s, pay stub. All of this stuff is on file. And in order to convince you of good, or to showcase theatrics and have you convinced that, yeah, we have downloaded your consciousness, is they'll be able to recite back things, general information like this, back to you. And someone who can't think is going to say, oh my God, they've downloaded your consciousness. But then when it comes down to intrinsic details, things that you might have, that you've experienced or encountered that you've kept to yourself, how you felt about it, they won't be able to recite that back to you because they have no way of knowing this. Things that you might have told only one other person or a handful of people in your life that they've never told anybody else, they won't be able to recite this back to you because they have no knowledge of it. So when you sit back and you think they can create an exact replica of me and download my consciousness and put it into some hard drive or some AI mechanical machine, that's never going to happen. What they can do is take the basic information that they already have, the general information that they already have, that they've been documenting for all these damn years now. It'll probably be harder to do with older people because the technology wasn't that sophisticated at that time and you didn't have cell phones back then. Now every last one of us has a tracking device known as a cell phone. Just based off of that, they can track enough about you to be able to recite stuff to have you convinced that somehow they have downloaded your consciousness. You go to a certain store and all of a sudden you see the ad up for items that are being sold in that store. How do they know this? Well, you went to that store. Your phone was tracking you when you went there. Oh, they pinged that location. They're not telling you this. And this is how they'll convince you that they are this sophisticated when they're not. I really want people to start thoroughly understanding these things. I want people to start knowing what you're dealing with, because these people are the masters of theatrics and trying to sell you a pipe dream that doesn't exist. And if you don't use critical thinking, you'll buy into this nonsense thinking that these people are this sophisticated and this intelligent when they're not. They're just sick, evil, and demonic, and want complete control over you and your life and everybody else around it. This is just, like I said, the strategy is an unsustainable strategy, because trying to have that level of control is equivalent to you trying to take water and contain it within both of your hands and not having a single droplet leak out. This is where these people are at. I don't want no drops coming out my hand. I want to control all of this water. And you know that's literally impossible. Doesn't make any sense. It's unsustainable because the water's going to seep out because your hands are not water or airtight. But this is what they believe they can do, and they're disconnected from reality. They're disconnected from life. They have come up with their own fantasy in their head, and now they're trying to enact that. They want to see that come to fruition, and it won't. The only way it would even get close to coming to fruition is if they can get the majority of people to fall in line with their bullshit. But here's the reason why that's not going to happen. Because when everything that you are doing is predicated toward other people's misery, at some point you are going to have resistance. Because people are going to get tired of being sick and tired. And that's where you go wrong. The stuff that these people are doing is not sustainable. They're degenerates, demonic at best, twisted in the mind. This is just what we're dealing with. And for those who can't critically think, you're going to think that AI is going to be coming to take over everything. And they're going to have you running around distracted thinking that some cybernetic computer-based system has selected you for extermination. Mind you, the ones who are behind this the whole damn time are your elites. You're rich and you're powerful. This will just be the hoax, the mask that they hide themselves behind, the pawns that they put on that chess piece that you would have to get through before you can get to them. Always understand where the source of your problems come from. They've caused the problems, and then they come back to you with the solution. But they have always been the problem. And with that being stated, that's all I got to say in this production. And I'll catch you on a later date.